It was my last delivery of the night. The clock in the car read 11:47 p.m., and the smell of melted cheese and pepperoni mingled with the sweat soaking my t-shirt under my faded red uniform. I had been pedaling through the streets of this forgotten city for 8 hours, delivering pizzas to lonely drunks and families pretending to be happy. But this one, the one at 3B on Forgotten Avenue, was the one that was going to change everything for me. Or at least, that's what I thought later, when terror had sunk into my bones like a rusty hook. The GPS on my phone guided me to the outskirts, where the neon lights faded into the darkness like blood in dirty water. The road became bumpy. Potholes rattled the pizza box on the passenger seat, and a cold wind seeped through the half-open windows, bringing the distant stench of a polluted river. I turned off the radio to concentrate. The static was getting on my nerves. Last one, just one more, I repeated to myself, like a mantra to keep from thinking about how alone I was on that deserted road. The building appeared out of nowhere, a mass of cracked concrete that seemed to lean toward the street as if it wanted to devour it. Faded graffiti covered the walls, skulls with tearful eyes, phrases scribbled in peeling red paint like, "Dreams die here." I parked the car under a flickering streetlight, its yellowish light fighting against the darkness that surrounded it. The air smelled of stale dampness, as if the building was sweating rotten secrets. I got out of the vehicle, the warm pizza box against my chest, and looked up. The third floor was a black rectangle dotted with blind windows, only one with a faint glow seeping through the threadbare curtains. I walked toward the main entrance, the asphalt crunching under my worn sneakers. The rusty metal door was ajar, as if someone had pushed it open in a hasty escape and never closed it completely. I pushed with my shoulder, and a sharp squeak tore through the silence, like nails scratching a chalkboard. The lobby was a pit of shadows. Broken tiles covered in dust, open mailboxes overflowing with yellowed letters like entrails. The elevator wasn't working. The out-of-order sign hung crookedly, smudged with dirty handprints, so I opted for the stairs. Each step groaned under my weight, a low moan that reverberated in the stairwell like a collective whisper of trapped souls. I climbed slowly, the box balanced in one hand, the other brushing against the cold, sticky railing. On the first floor, a half-open door let out a smell of mold and something sweeter, like rotten meat. I heard a rustling inside, like fabric against wood, but I kept climbing. My heart was already beating a little faster, not from the effort, but from that intuition that tells you something isn't right. The second floor was worse. The hallway narrowed, the walls splattered with dark stains that could be moisture or dried blood. A bare light bulb flickered, casting shadows that danced like fingers reaching out to me. I paused for a second, panting, and I could have sworn I saw a silhouette at the end of the hallway, motionless, watching me. I blinked, and there was nothing there. "Imagination," I muttered, but sweat was already beading on my forehead. I reached the third floor with my legs trembling slightly. The hallway was a narrow tunnel, lit only by the dim light filtering in from the stairwell. Doors numbered, with rusty plaques flanked the sides. 3A, 3B, 3C. The one for 3B was at the end, a splintered wooden slab with a crooked number, as if it had been nailed down in anger. The GPS confirmed, lights on, but the client was not answering the phone. I knocked with my knuckles 3 times, dry and professional. The echo was lost in the stillness, and only the distant hum of a refrigerator somewhere broke the silence. I waited. Nothing. The heat from the pizza seeped through the box, burning my hand, but I didn't move. I knocked harder, the sound echoing like gunshots in an empty box. My pulse quickened, a dull drum in my ears. "Hello? Pizza," I shouted, my voice coming out higher than I wanted. Silence. I looked at my phone. The app said, "Delivery confirmed," but the guy hadn't paid. I thought about leaving it at the door, as usual, but something held me back. That glow in the window. Was it brighter now? Or maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, shuffling, as if someone were dragging an injured foot across the floor. They came from behind the door, slow, irregular, a scrape, a muffled gasp, and then silence again. My mouth went dry. "Sir? Your pizza is here," I shouted louder, but my voice cracked at the end. The footsteps stopped, just on the other side. I felt their presence, like an invisible weight pressing against the wood. I waited, my heart pounding so hard I thought he would hear it. Nothing. Just the distant drip of a pipe, like a clock counting down the seconds to something inevitable. I pushed the door instinctively, just a little, to see if it was open. And it was. Just a crack, but enough. The knob turned with a soft, treacherous click, and the door opened like a smiling mouth. The hallway inside was a black abyss, except for a thread of yellowish light at the end, perhaps from a kitchen. The air that came out was thick, heavy with a metallic smell, like fresh blood mixed with burnt garlic. I took a step back, but my eyes were fixed on the darkness. There, at the end of the hallway, a shadow. Elongated, distorted, as if the man, or whatever it was leaning against the wall to keep from falling. It didn't move, but it breathed. A raspy, ragged whistle, like lungs full of gravel. And then, the eyes. Two bright yellow dots floating in the darkness like embers in a well. They were looking at me. They didn't blink. They just stared, with an intensity that made my blood run cold, as if they were measuring every inch of my soul. I felt a tingling sensation in the back of my neck, the primal instinct of cornered prey. Sweat soaked my shirt in an instant, cold and sticky. The pizza box slipped from my hands, falling with a dull thud to the floor, the lid opening and spilling melted cheese onto the dirty tiles. I tried to scream, but only a muffled moan came out. The shadow moved, an inch, barely, and the scrape of its injured foot scraped the floor again. Those eyes. God, those eyes were fixed on me, promising something worse than death. I ran. I didn't think, I just ran. The stairs, a blur of steps I took 3 at a time, my heart a fist in my chest. Behind me, a click. The door closing, sealing the evil inside. I ran down to the lobby in seconds, stumbling on the last step, my knee hitting the floor with a sharp pain that I didn't even register. I ran outside, gasping for breath, and threw myself into the car, slamming the door shut with a bang that made the chassis vibrate. I started the engine with trembling hands, the keys slipping twice before fitting. I looked in the rear view mirror. The building stood impassive, the streetlight flickering like a winking eye. I stepped on the gas, the wheels screeching against the asphalt, and sped away, the river of city lights engulfing me like a lifeline. I didn't sleep that night. I threw myself onto the bed in my tiny apartment, the rumpled sheets smelling of old cigarette smoke, and relived every second. Those eyes. They glowed with hunger, with something ancient and broken. I dreamed of them, floating in the darkness, multiplying, whispering my name in a language I didn't understand. I woke up drenched in sweat, my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was 7:12 a.m., a message from headquarters. Client 3B reports delivery not received. Problems. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned on the TV, flipping through local news channels until a headline froze my blood. Fugitive captured on Forgotten Avenue. Suspect in 3 homicides evades justice for months. The anchor, with his plastic smile, described the raid. A SWAT team storming into 3B that morning, finding the man curled up in a corner, covered in scars and dried blood. He had been living there for weeks, feeding on stolen cans and something else. The camera showed the splintered door, the same one I had pushed open. The suspect, nicknamed El Cojo, the lame one, because of his leg injury, had turned the apartment into a death trap, said the voiceover. Grainy photos, a gaunt face, sunken but unmistakable eyes, yellow even in black and white. I jumped up, my stomach churning. Had I been seconds away from going in, of becoming his 4th victim? I called the police that afternoon. my voice trembling as I recounted my night. The officer on the phone simply took notes, his tone bored. "Sir, the guy is already in custody. Thanks for the info." I hung up, but relief did not come. Those eyes haunted me in every shadow, in every half-open door. Days passed, but the paranoia settled in like an unwanted tenant. Every delivery became a test, an unanswered doorbell, a hallway too dark, and my mind replayed the scene. One night, in a similar block, I knocked on a door and heard shuffling footsteps. My pulse raced, my hand sweaty on the doorknob. I pushed just a little and saw nothing, just an empty hallway, a TV on with static. But the click as it closed left me shaking. Another shift, another delivery at dusk. This time, a penthouse in the center, bright lights and pop music filtering through. But as I went up, the elevator got stuck between floors. The light went out, plunging me into absolute blackness. I felt the air thicken, warm breath on the back of my neck. "Hello," I whispered, panic climbing my spine. A scratch on the wall close by, like nails searching for flesh. I hit the emergency button, my heart a war drum, and the light came back with a buzz. The elevator descended, but I could have sworn I saw fresh footprints on the panel, as if someone had been there with me. The tension built, layer by layer. In my mind, the lame man wasn't just a fugitive. He was a specter, unleashed by my recklessness. I searched obscure forums on the internet, under the alias Shadow Delivery Man, looking for clues, threads about haunted buildings, urban legends of yellow eyes in the suburbs. One night, I found an anonymous post. The lame man doesn't limp because of an injury. It's because of what he drags behind him. The link led to a blurry photo, a silhouette with something hanging from its leg like a chain or a small body. I couldn't stop. My boss noticed my distraction, late deliveries, customer complaints about my pale face. "Man, you look like a ghost," he said once, laughing. But I wasn't laughing. Every night before leaving, I obsessively checked the GPS, avoiding the outskirts, until an order came in, 3B, Forgotten Avenue. Another order. My stomach sank. "Mistake?" I asked. "No, repeat. Maybe the new tenant." I drove slowly, the sun setting like an open wound. The building was the same, fresh graffiti now, as if evil had regenerated. I parked, the box shaking in my hands. I climbed the stairs, step by step, each creak a reminder. The third-floor hallways smelled worse, like chemical disinfectant mixed with rot. I knocked on the door of 3B, my fist heavy as lead. Footsteps, shuffling. My breath caught in my throat. "Pizza," I shouted, but my voice was a whisper. The door was ajar again, inviting me in. I pushed, my heart racing, and the hallway unfolded. Dim lights, furniture covered in sheets, but at the end, that shadow. Closer this time, eyes glowing, fixed on me, and now I could see more. A hunched figure, bandaged leg dripping something dark. It smiled, jagged teeth, yellow like its eyes. "Come in," it hissed, its voice a rasp of gravel. "The pizza is cold." I backed away, sweat blinding me. I ran, down the stairs in a rush of panic. But this time, I heard the door swing open, footsteps following me, dragging but fast, limping with fury. The hallway, the exit, so far away. I stumbled on the first floor, falling to my knees, the box bursting open and splattering red sauce like blood. I turned, and there it was. The silhouette at the top of the stairs, descending step by step, its eyes devouring me. I screamed, a primal sound that tore through the night. I crawled toward the door, my nails breaking against the floor, and rolled out onto the asphalt. The car, the keys. I took them out, turned them on, and took off with tires screeching. In the rearview mirror, I saw him, standing in the doorway, motionless, watching me leave. But it wasn't the lame one. It was me. My distorted reflection in the dirty windshield, eyes bloodshot with terror, limping in my mind from the blow to my knee. I arrived home, shaking, My hands clenched around the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Barricading myself in was the first thing I did. I double-locked the door, pushed the sofa against it, and checked every window, every lock. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Headquarters, my boss. An unknown number that I hung up on immediately. I poured myself a drink of cheap whiskey from the kitchen, but the liquid burned my throat like acid. I couldn't sit still. I paced around the tiny living room, the floor creaking under my feet, imagining they were someone else's footsteps. That night, my sleep was fragmented, interrupted by every noise. The neighbor upstairs moving furniture, the wind whipping the trash in the alley. At dawn, my eyes gritty and my body heavy, I turned on the TV out of habit. The local news opened with a headline that froze me in my tracks. New tenant on Forgotten Avenue. A middle-aged man, brother of the captured fugitive. No criminal record, but police are investigating possible links. The anchor showed images of the building, now cordoned off with yellow tape. The brother claims to be innocent, just moving in to clean up the family legacy, but witnesses report suspicious movements last night. My name wasn't mentioned, but I felt like everyone was staring at me through the screen. I called the police again, this time yelling at the officer. The guy in 3B isn't the lame one, but he's his brother. He followed me, I swear. The guy sighed, promising to look into it, but his voice was the same as always, tired, disinterested. Hours passed in a blur of anxiety. I tried to quit by text, but my boss replied with, "Come to the office tomorrow, we'll talk." I went out to buy cigarettes. I needed air, which was normal, but on the corner, a gray car parked too close, the driver wearing a low cap, motionless. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding like a hammer, and I swore I saw a crutch sticking out of the window. I ran back, tripping over a manhole, and locked myself in again. At dusk, there was a knock on the door, loud, insistent. "Delivery!" shouted a hoarse voice from the other side. My blood ran cold. I hadn't ordered anything. I crept over, my eye glued to the peephole. There he was, a skinny man, with a pizza box in his hands, his bandaged leg peeking out from under dirty pants. He smiled, yellow teeth gleaming in the hallway light. "I know you're in there," he murmured, his voice seeping like smoke. "El Cojo told me about you. He said you were persistent." The doorknob turned on its own. I hadn't touched it. The door creaked open slowly, and he limped inside, leaving a trail of dark drops on the floor. The box fell from his hands, revealing not pizza but photos of me, leaving the building that night, my parked car, my apartment from the street. "Family," he said, extending a calloused hand. "You owe us a delivery." I tried to scream, to run, but his other hand, quick, unexpected, closed around my throat, squeezing with the strength of someone who is practiced in the dark. I fell to my knees, the world blurring into yellow spots, my nails digging into his forearm as I gasped for air. He laughed, a guttural sound like gravel in a tube, and released me only to punch me in the face with his free fist. The impact was a burst of pain, cartilage breaking in my nose, warm blood splattering my shirt, the metallic taste flooding my mouth. I rolled to the side, coughing, and reached for the lamp on the table. Heavy, cracked ceramic, with trembling fingers. I lifted it and smashed it into his bandaged knee, the crack of bone and bandage breaking, echoing like a gunshot. He howled, an animal cry that pierced my ears, and doubled over, letting go of me completely. I crawled toward the kitchen, the floor slippery with my own blood, and grabbed the knife from the wooden block, the big one, for meat. He stood up, limping worse now, his leg dripping dark red, and lunged at me with a growl. I blocked the first blow with my forearm, the searing pain shooting up my arm like fire, but I stabbed upward, the blade sinking into his shoulder with a wet, dull thud. Flesh tearing, warm blood splattering my face. He recoiled, panting, his yellow eyes clouded with shock, but he didn't give up. He charged at me again, his weight knocking me against the countertop, the knife falling with a clink. His fists rained down on me, one to my ribs, breaking something with a snap that knocked the wind out of me. Another to my temple, stars exploding in my vision. I screamed, kicking, and my boot connected with his groin, a low blow that made him let out a muffled groan. I seized the moment, rolling away and crawling toward the wall phone, dialing 911 with bloody fingers as he staggered to his feet. "Yes. Help. Assault. My apartment," I stammered, my voice hoarse and broken. He limped closer, his shoulder bleeding profusely, but sirens were already wailing in the distance, approaching like an omen. He stopped, staring at me with pure hatred, those yellow eyes piercing me one last time. "This isn't over, delivery man," he hissed, spitting blood on my floor. Then he turned and limped toward the door, disappearing into the hallway, just as the first knocks from the police echoed on the wood. I slumped against the wall, my body a map of bruises and cuts, my nose swollen and bleeding, my ribs burning with every breath. I survived, but the terror didn't go away. Every half-open door, every shuffling step on the street reminds me that the trap on 3B wasn't just an apartment, it was a legacy of violence, and I now bore its marks engraved on my skin. I quit the next day, my face bandaged and my soul in pieces, but I know that in some dark corner of this city, someone else will hear a knock on their door and feel the rusty hook digging into their bones. There are moments in your life that divide your existence into two irreconcilable halves, before and after. The moment you understand that your death is a real possibility, not an abstract one. The moment you feel the edge of a knife reflecting neon light and you know that the next few seconds will determine whether you ever see your family again. For me, that moment came in an Oakland alley at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in November, when my GPS took me on a shortcut that almost cost me my life. My name is Corwin Delgado. I'm 28 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've been working as a food delivery driver in the Bay Area. It's not glamorous. It's not what I dreamed of doing when I was a kid, but it pays the bills while I finish my online degree and allows me to have a flexible schedule to take care of my 4-year-old daughter, Eudora. Her mother, Magnolia, works night shifts as a nurse, so I make deliveries at night while Eudora sleeps at my mother's house. That night was like any other. My 5th delivery of the shift, pad thai, spring rolls, and red curry from a Thai restaurant in Temescal. The customer was only 23 miles away, according to the GPS. Estimated time, 8 minutes. I had learned to trust the GPS. I had to. Oakland is a city of more than 400,000 people, with neighborhoods that change character within the space of a block. You can go from million-dollar Victorian homes to public housing projects in less than 5 minutes. The GPS had guided me thousands of times without a hitch. It had saved me time, gas, frustration. That night, it would cost me almost everything. I left the restaurant with the cooler bag slung over my shoulder and got on my Kawasaki Ninja 400, a jet black sports bike I had bought secondhand a year ago. It wasn't new, but it was reliable, fast, and fuel efficient. It was my work tool, my livelihood. The GPS directed me east on Telegraph Avenue. Traffic was normal for a Tuesday night, heavy but moving. After 2 miles, the digital voice instructed me, turn right on Myrtle Street for a 3-minute shortcut. 3 minutes meant the difference between meeting the delivery time and receiving a bad rating. 3 minutes meant being able to make another delivery before rush hour ended. 3 minutes meant more money for Eudora's college fund. I turned right. Myrtle Street was narrower than I expected. 2- and 3-story apartment buildings crowded both sides, many with boarded-up windows or covered with metal bars. Street lighting was spotty. Some lamps worked, others were broken or turned off. Graffiti covered nearly every available surface. Not the colorful mural art you see in gentrified parts of Oakland, but territorial tags in black and blue, markers of gang boundaries that I didn't understand, but others would recognize instantly. Part of me, the part that had grown up in East Los Angeles, and understood the signs of a neighborhood where you shouldn't be after dark, was screaming at me to turn around, but the GPS said to keep going straight, and I had a delivery to make. In 200 feet, turn left into the alley. Alleys were rarely good news in Oakland, but the GPS had never led me wrong before, and technically, many buildings had rear entrances accessible only by alleys. Maybe the customer lived in one of those. I slowed down as I approached the alley. It was narrow, barely wide enough for a small car. Trash cans flanked both sides. The only light came from a flashing neon sign from a liquor store on the corner that cast a ghostly reddish-purple glow over everything. Your destination is 50 feet ahead, on the right-hand side. I entered the alley slowly, the motorcycle engine purring softly. My eyes adjusted to the dim light. I could see the end of the alley where the delivery address was supposed to be. A metal back door of an apartment building with the number 437B, barely visible in faded paint. The alley was empty. Silent. Too silent. That sense of danger, that primitive instinct that tells you when something is wrong, intensified. But I was a professional. I had made thousands of deliveries. I couldn't let paranoia take control. Besides, I was already here. The food was in my bag. The customer was waiting. I parked the motorcycle near the end of the alley, far enough from the door to make a quick turn if I needed to leave. I left the engine running. I took out the side stand but didn't turn off the ignition. My helmet remained on. These were precautions I always took on night deliveries in unfamiliar neighborhoods. I grabbed the food bag and walked toward door 437B. My boots echoed on the cracked pavement. The smell of the alley hit me. Rotten garbage, urine, something sweet and chemical that was probably meth being cooked somewhere nearby. 30 feet to the door. 20. 10. Then I saw it. A movement in my peripheral vision. Shadows separating from other shadows behind a large dumpster to my left. Not one shadow. 3. My body froze. Every instinct screamed danger, but my brain couldn't process what I was seeing fast enough to act. 3 figures emerged from the space between the containers. All men, though it was hard to see details in the dim light. All wore hoodies with the hoods up, faces obscured. All moved with the confidence of predators who had done this before, and all carried knives. The one in the middle, the leader I assumed, held a large hunting knife with a blade at least 6 inches long that glinted with purple-red reflections from the neon sign. The other 2 had switchblades, smaller but just as deadly. "Give me the bike." The leader's voice was deep, rough, like gravel being crushed. It wasn't a question. It was an order backed by sharp steel and the certainty that he would use it. Time became strange. Everything slowed down and sped up simultaneously. My heart was pounding against my ribs so hard that I was sure they could hear it. My mouth went dry instantly. My hands, stupidly holding a bag of pad thai, began to shake. "The bike, dude, now." The leader took another step forward. His 2 companions spread out slightly, flanking me, cutting off escape angles. It was a rehearsed maneuver. They had done it before, probably many times. My mind raced through options like an overloaded computer. Option 1, give them the bike. It was just a thing. It could be replaced. My life couldn't. But without the bike, I couldn't work. Without work, I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't feed Eudora. I couldn't finish school. And my insurance wouldn't cover theft. I'd chosen the cheapest plan because it was all I could afford. Option 2, fight. But it was 3 against 1. They had weapons. I had a bag of Thai food. The math didn't favor my survival. Option 3, run. But I was 30 feet from my bike. They were 10 feet from me. And the alley behind me was a dead end. I checked when I entered. The only way out was past them. "Last chance, bro." The leader closed the distance to 6 feet. I could see more details now. Dark skin, patchy beard, scar across his left eyebrow. Young, maybe 22 or 23. Dead eyes. Eyes that had seen and done things that had killed any compassion he once had. And in that moment, With those dead eyes staring at me, something clicked in my brain, a clarity born of pure terror. I was going to die here. If I gave them the bike, they would stab me anyway. No witnesses, no problem. If I fought, they would stab me. If I did nothing, they would stab me. The only option was to run. And it had to be now. I threw the bag of food directly at the leader's face. It wasn't heavy, but it surprised him. Red curry and pad thai exploded in an arc of oil and noodles. He instinctively recoiled, raising his hands to protect his face. That second of distraction was all I needed. I turned and ran. Not toward my bike. That would be too obvious. They would expect that. I ran sideways, toward the right side of the alley where there was a 6-foot-high chain-link fence I had noticed when I entered. Behind it was an empty lot. Beyond the lot, streetlights, people, security. "Get him!" The leader's shout pierced the night. Feet pounding the pavement behind me. Multiple pairs. Close, too close. My helmet, designed to protect my head in motorcycle accidents, was now dead weight, slowing me down. But I didn't have time to take it off. I only had time to run. 10 feet to the fence. 8, 6. A hand grabbed the back of my leather jacket, fingers clinging, pulling. I stumbled, almost fell. I spun violently, my jacket tearing as I broke free. I heard the sound of fabric ripping, and then I was free, staggering forward. 4 feet to the fence. I jumped. My hands grabbed the top of the chain-link fence. The fence shook violently, but held. I pulled up, my boots searching for footholds on the mesh. The helmet threw off my balance, my center of gravity completely off. Something whistled past my head. A knife. One of them had thrown it. It missed by inches, bouncing off the mesh with a metallic clink. I was halfway over the fence when hands grabbed my left leg. They pulled down with brutal force. My grip on the fence slipped. I was going to fall. They were going to drag me back, and then it would be over. I kicked wildly with my free leg. My boot connected with something, a face, I hoped, and I heard a cry of pain. The grip on my leg loosened. I pulled with every ounce of strength I had, propelling myself over the top of the fence. I fell awkwardly on the other side, landing on my shoulder. Pain exploded in my collarbone. Something broke. I didn't know what. It didn't matter. I rolled, got to my feet, kept running. The empty lot was a minefield of debris, broken glass, wood with nails, trash. I ran through it as if the ground were solid, my eyes fixed on the streetlights beyond. 50 yards, 40, 30. Behind me, the sounds of my attackers climbing the fence. Slower than me, I had the advantage of desperation, but still coming, still chasing. "We're going to kill you, you faggot." The leader's voice, now tinged with rage instead of the previous business-like calm. I'd wounded his pride. I'd made him bleed. That made him more dangerous. 20 yards to the street. 10. My lungs burned. My shoulder throbbed with agony. But I couldn't stop. To stop was to die. I burst out of the empty lot onto the lit street. Cars passed by. A bus stopped at a nearby corner. People walking. Witnesses. Salvation. I stumbled toward the nearest group of people. 3 college students smoking outside a convenience store. Probably from UC Berkeley, lost in this part of Oakland. "Help me," I gasped, nearly collapsing against the store wall. "Guy, trying to rob me. Knives." The student stared at me with wide eyes. A woman, green-dyed hair, nose piercing, pulled out her phone. "I'll call 911. I looked back at the empty lot. My attackers had stopped at the edge of the streetlight. I could see them clearly now for the first time. All young. 2 black, 1 Latino. Hoodies marked with colors and symbols I didn't understand, but probably declared gang affiliation. The leader looked me straight in the eye. Even from 30 feet away, I could see the promise in his eyes. This isn't over. Then they backed into the shadows and disappeared. The woman with green hair was talking to the 911 dispatcher. "Yes, he's here. He seems hurt. No, the attacker left. Yes, at the corner of Myrtle and..." The adrenaline that had kept me going began to fade. My legs turned to jelly. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold concrete. My shoulder throbbed. Now that I wasn't running for my life, I could feel how badly I was injured. Dislocated maybe, or broken. But I was alive. Somehow, miraculously, I was alive. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, a middle-aged woman with a tired face named Tennyson, and a younger man named Jameer who looked like he had just graduated from the academy. I told them everything while a paramedic examined my shoulder. The GPS, the alley, the 3 attackers, my escape. I described the men as best I could, though the details were already becoming blurred in my adrenaline-filled memory. Officer Tennyson took notes with an expression that suggested she had heard this story 100 times before. "That alley," she said when I finished, "is a known hotspot. Delivery drivers are frequent targets there. We average 2 to 3 incidents per month on that block." "Why aren't there any signs? Why did the GPS take me there?" Hearing that this was a known pattern made it all somehow worse. This hadn't been random bad luck. It had been a trap, and I had walked right into it. GPS companies are slow to update data on dangerous areas, he explained. And the gangs adapt. They find new places to set up ambushes when the old ones get too hot. Officer Jameer returned from checking the alley. "Your motorcycle is gone. They'll probably take it to a chop shop, strip it for parts. Sorry, buddy." It was gone. My livelihood, my work tool, gone. 2 years of meticulous monthly payments. Thousands of dollars I couldn't afford to lose. "You need to file a theft report with your insurance company," Officer Tennyson said, "and I suggest you consider another line of work. This isn't going to get any better. Oakland has one of the highest vehicle theft rates in the country. Delivery drivers are easy targets." Easy. Easy targets. That's what we were to them, not people, just targets. The paramedic determined that my shoulder was dislocated but not broken. He popped it back into place with a quick, brutal motion that made me scream. They gave me painkillers and advised me to go to the hospital if the pain got worse. One of the students, a guy with thick glasses named Larkin, offered to Uber me back to my apartment. I gratefully accepted. I had no other way to get home. During the ride, I checked my phone. 3 text messages from the customer whose food I never delivered, each angrier than the last. A notification from the delivery app that I had been flagged for not completing the delivery. My rating had dropped. If it dropped any further, I could be deactivated from the platform. I almost laughed. I almost cried. I almost screamed, but I just sat there in the back seat of a stranger's Prius, staring at my phone, feeling more broken than my shoulder. My mother almost had a heart attack when I got home. "What happened? Are you okay?" "Oh my God, Corwin," I told her. "Everything." As I spoke, I could see the horror and then the anger growing on her face. When I finished, she hugged me, carefully, mindful of my injured shoulder, and cried. "No more," she said firmly. "No more deliveries. It's too dangerous." "Mom, I need the money." "You don't need to be dead. We'll find another way. But no more night deliveries, no more motorcycles. Promise me." I wanted to argue. I wanted to point to the bills, the rent, Eudore's tuition, the hundreds of expenses that wouldn't disappear just because I'd had a bad shift. But when I looked at her face, when I saw the real fear there, the recognition of how close she'd come to losing me, I couldn't. "I promise," I whispered. That night, after my mother went to bed, I sat in my room with the lights off and the curtains closed. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those dead eyes. I felt those hands grabbing my leg. I heard that voice. "We're going to kill you." I was alive. I had escaped. I should be grateful, but all I felt was terror. Terror that made me check the locks 3 times. Terror that made me jump at every noise. Terror that turned every shadow into a potential attacker. The next few days were a bureaucratic nightmare. Filing the police report. Dealing with the insurance company, which, as I had feared, did not cover the theft because I had not paid for that additional coverage. Explaining to the delivery company why my rating had dropped, and why I no longer had a vehicle. Desperately looking for a job, any job, that could replace the income I had lost. But worse than the bureaucracy was the psychological trauma. I couldn't drive down Myrtle Street without my heart racing. I couldn't see three men together, no matter who they were, no matter the context, without my body panicking. I couldn't be in enclosed spaces without identifying all the exits. And I couldn't stop thinking about all the ways that night could have ended differently. If I had been a second slower, if the fence had been higher, if there hadn't been students on that corner. If. A week after the incident, Magnolia came to pick up Eudora. I hadn't told her what happened. I didn't want to worry her. I didn't want her to use this as ammunition in the custody arguments I knew would eventually come. But she knew me well enough to know something was wrong. "Corwin, what happened?" Her eyes, the same dark brown as Eudora's, scanned me with concern. I told her. An edited version, fewer graphic details, but the essential truth. Her face hardened. "You can't keep doing this. It's too dangerous." "I already quit the deliveries," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I'm looking for something else." "Looking? Corwin, what are you going to do for money in the meantime? You know I can barely cover my share of Eudora's expenses." "I'll figure it out." I wouldn't figure it out. I had no plan. I had no answers. But I couldn't admit that either. She sighed. "Look, maybe you should consider moving. Out of Oakland, somewhere cheaper, safer. I can't leave the area. My mother is here. Eudora is here. My life is here." "Your life almost ended here," she replied. "What would have happened to Eudora if you had been killed that night? Have you thought about that?" I had thought about it. I had thought about it constantly. My daughter growing up without a father, my mother losing her only son, all for 3 minutes of delivery time saved and a shortcut suggested by GPS. After Magnolia left with Eudora, I sat in my empty apartment and finally allowed myself to break down. I cried. For the first time since that night, I really cried. For the fear, for the loss, for the feeling of being completely out of control of my own life. 2 weeks later, Officer Tennyson called me. 3 men had been arrested for a series of robberies in the Myrtle Street area. The descriptions matched the ones I had given. Could I come in to identify them in a lineup? I went. I looked through the one-way glass at 6 men lined up. Number 3 was the leader. I was sure. Those dead eyes. That scar. "That's him," I said. "Number 3. The other 2 were there too. I identified them with certainty. "Good work," Officer Tennyson said. "Your testimony will help put them away for a while." But as I left the police station, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Because locking up 3 criminals wouldn't undo what had happened. It wouldn't give me back my bike. It wouldn't make me feel safe again. Months passed. I got a job in a warehouse. Stable work, boring, low-paying but safe. No alleys, no night deliveries, just boxes and pallets and predictable routine. But the trauma remained. I couldn't walk alone after dark without looking over my shoulder every few seconds. I couldn't be in a dimly lit parking lot without feeling panic. I couldn't see knives, even in restaurants, even in completely innocuous contexts, without feeling that visceral terror. My therapist, I started seeing one after the first month of insomnia and panic attacks, said I had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, like war veterans, like assault survivors. "Your brain experienced a real life-threatening event," she explained. "It rewired itself to be hypervigilant, to detect danger everywhere. It's an adaptive response. It kept you alive, but now it's interfering with your ability to function. We did EMDR, exposure therapy, breathing techniques. Slowly, very slowly, the symptoms improved. I could sleep most nights without nightmares. I could go out without constant panic. But something had changed permanently. A lost innocence, an understanding of how fragile life is, how quickly it can end by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, 2 years later, I can talk about that night without shaking. I can drive through Oakland, though I avoid certain areas, certain alleys that look too similar. I can function. But I will never again trust GPS completely. I will never again take a shortcut without checking first. I will never again assume I am safe just because it is a routine delivery in a familiar city. Because I learned something in that alley. Something I hope none of you ever have to learn the way I did. The difference between life and death is sometimes just 3 seconds of reaction time. Just one wrong turn. Just one algorithm that doesn't know or doesn't care that it's leading you straight into danger. The GPS told me I'd save 3 minutes. It almost cost me everything. And every time I see Eudora now, when I hold her and feel her solid, real weight against me, I think about how close she came to growing up without a father. How close I came to becoming just another statistic. Just another delivery driver who didn't make it home. That's the part that haunts me the most. Not the knife, not the chase, but the sheer randomness of it all. If I had taken a different delivery, if the GPS had taken me down a different route, if I had been 2 minutes earlier or later, if. But I'm not dead. I'm here. I survived. And that's the story I need to remember when the nightmares come back. When the panic attacks hit me. When I see 3 figures in the shadows and my body wants to run. I survived, but I'll never be the same again. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that vigilance, that fear, that constant awareness of danger, maybe that's what keeps me alive now. Or maybe it's just the scar I carry from that night. One that no one else can see, but that I feel every day. The scar from the dead-end alley that almost became my grave. My name is Alex, and for 3 years, I've been roaming the streets of this city like a ghost on 2 wheels. Food deliveries, packages, whatever the app throws at me on my phone at midnight. I'm no hero or villain, just a guy trying to pay the rent with tips that sometimes don't come. But that night, October 15th, 2025, everything changed. It was as if the universe had marked me with an invisible QR code. Warning, nightmare zone. It all started with a beep on my phone at 2:17 a.m. I was parked in an empty lot near downtown, smoking a half-finished cigarette to stifle the sleep that was stinging my eyes. The screen lit up with a ghostly glow. Urgent order, high priority. Chicken soup, ibuprofen, a thermal blanket, and a thermos of tea. Destination 47 Iron Street, North Industrial Zone, the neighborhood where dreams go to die. It wasn't the first time I'd been sent to that concrete hell. The industrial zone is a labyrinth of dead factories and warehouses that look like open tombs, with graffiti whispering threats in forgotten languages, flashing neon lights from cheap motels, and the eternal smell of burnt oil and stagnant rain. But there was something strange about this order. The customer's note: urgent, seriously ill, do not call, leave at door. And the payment was already made in advance, double the normal amount. My instinct, that knot in my stomach that has saved me from robberies and rabid dogs, twisted a little. But money speaks louder than inner demons. I accepted the order. The supermarket on duty was 10 minutes away, a den lit like an operating room under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry wasps. I loaded the bag. The soup steamed in its polystyrene container. The pills crunched in their blister pack like small bones. The blanket was rough to the touch, like the skin of someone who has forgotten the sun. I paid with the app card and went out to the parking lot, where my motorcycle, an old Yamaha with a hoarse exhaust, waited like a nervous horse. The engine roared as it started, and I sped off into the night. The city slept a restless sleep. Red traffic lights stopped me like accusing eyes, and the wind whipped my waterproof jacket, bringing echoes of distant sirens. The road to the industrial zone was straight but treacherous, a deserted highway flanked by rusty shipping containers that looked like giant coffins. At one point, my headlights swept across a crooked sign: "Welcome to the Forgotten Border." Ridiculous, but at that hour, everything seemed like an omen. I arrived at Calle del Hierro at 2:45 a.m. The neighborhood was a metal graveyard, silhouettes of cranes standing motionless like hanged men, chains clanking in the wind like muffled laughter. Number 47 was a townhouse at the end of the block, squeezed between two abandoned factories. It didn't fit. Who lives in a place like this? The facade was made of chipped bricks, with windows boarded up by planks that creaked like loose teeth. A single, yellowish light filtered from the ground floor, flickering like a candle about to go out. I parked my motorcycle a few yards away, the engine off, leaving a silence so heavy that I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. I took down my bag, the plastic rustling against my gloves. I walked slowly along the cracked sidewalk, stepping in puddles that reflected the moon like broken mirrors. The air smelled of stale dampness and something metallic like fresh blood. My boot grazed an empty can, and the metallic noise bounced off the walls like a muffled gunshot. I stopped, my heart racing. Nothing. Just the wind. I rang the doorbell, a rusty ding-dong like the last breath of a dying man. I waited, counting the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 10. Then a voice, weak, trembling like dry leaves scraping the ground. "Please, leave it at the door. I can't move." It was a woman, elderly, judging by her hoarse, broken voice. Frightened. No, more than that. Terrified. As if every word cost her a piece of her soul. "It's okay, ma'am," I murmured, even though I knew she couldn't hear me. I left the bag on the doorstep, the cardboard damp from the light rain that was beginning to fall. I turned to leave, but something pinned my feet to the asphalt. That instinct again, the one that says, "Look back, idiot." I turned my head. The curtain on the front window, a threadbare fabric, stained with something dark, moved slightly. A centimeter, enough for the light inside to illuminate the interior like a flashlight beam in a cave. And I saw it. An arm. Thick, hairy, with veins bulging like taut ropes. It emerged from the darkness like a snake coming out of its burrow. It coiled around her neck. It wasn't an embrace. It was a claw. Fingers like pliers digging into wrinkled skin, forcing her back into the shadows. I heard a muffled gurgling sound, like water going down a clogged drain. Her eyes, just a flash but enough, were wells of pure panic, pleading, staring at me through the dirty glass. "Help," they said without words. "Run." The world slowed down. My throat closed like a steel trap. The air turned to lead. How long was I there? A second, an eternity. The arm pulled harder, and the curtain fell with a thud, but not before I saw the glint of something metallic in his other hand. A knife. A broken bottle. Terror injected me with pure adrenaline. My legs moved on their own. I ran to the motorcycle, my boots splashing in puddles that spattered like arterial blood. The engine took forever to start. 2 kicks, 3, and when it roared, I accelerated as if fleeing from the devil himself. Calle del Hierro became a blur of shadows, lampposts leaning like accusing fingers, a stray dog barking from an alley, red eyes reflecting my headlights. I looked in the rearview mirror. Nothing. But I could feel eyes piercing the back of my neck. Had he seen me? Would he come after me? I left the neighborhood at 50 the wind, howling in my ears like a lament. My phone vibrated in my pocket, the app confirming delivery, but I ignored it. I took the device out with a trembling hand while keeping the bike straight on the highway. I called 911. "Emergency," I gasped when they answered. "Domestic violence, 47 Calle del Hierro. Elderly woman assaulted by a man. I saw her being grabbed by the neck. Go now." The operator asked for details, calm as a dead lake. But I couldn't stop shaking. Cold sweat ran down my back, sticking my shirt to my skin. "Are you safe, sir?" "Safe?" I laughed, a broken sound. "I don't know, but if you don't go, God, if you don't go." I hung up before I broke down. I kept driving, zigzagging through side streets, paranoid about every shadow. Was that the sound of an engine behind me, or just the echo of my own terror? I didn't sleep that night. I took refuge in a truck stop diner on the edge of town, a dive with sticky tables and coffee that tasted like ash. I ordered a plate of eggs that I didn't touch, just stared out the fogged-up window, imagining shapes in the mist. Had they saved her? Or had he silenced her forever? My treacherous mind wove scenarios. Him dragging her into the basement, the knife cutting through air and flesh, her last gasps muffled in spilled soup. At dawn, the phone rang again. Not the app, but the police. "Mr. Ramirez, thank you for the call. We rescued her. She was bruised but alive. She used the delivery as a code. Soup for help, medicine for abuse. You saved her." Relief, but not peace. Because that night opened a Pandora's box in my head. Since then, every order is Russian roulette. I'll tell you why, step by step, because if I don't let it all out, it will eat me alive. Let's start at the beginning. I wasn't always a night delivery driver. 5 years ago, I was an office worker at an accounting firm, numbers in perfect rows. But the pandemic chewed me up and spat me out. Job loss, divorce, a mortgage that was strangling me like a noose. The delivery app was my lifeline, flexible, anonymous. "Be your own boss," the ad said. You're your own executioner. The first few nights were pure adrenaline, streets alive with neon, generous tips from happy drunks. But soon the darkness revealed its teeth. Remember the Halloween order, the one with extra blood on the pizza? Bitter laugh. It was ketchup, but the house was a Victorian mausoleum on the outskirts, with candles flickering in every window. I rang the bell, and a 10-year-old girl opened it, made up like the living dead, her eyes sunken with real dark circles. "Dad says to come in," she whispered. Inside, drunken laughter and thick smoke. I ran out, pizza untouched. 2 weeks later, I read in the newspaper, "Underground party, mass overdose." How many ghosts did I carry that night? Or the delivery to the abandoned building downtown, the one with the under-renovation apartments. Order, dinner for one, red wine. I climbed creaky stairs, my phone flashlight dancing shadows that looked like outstretched hands. Door 4B, half open, broken chain hanging like a severed tongue. Inside, silence. I left the bag and fled, but I heard a muffled sob as I closed the door. The next day, eviction for debt. The guy hung himself that same night. My tip, 0. My burden, eternal, but nothing like the one on Calle del Hierro. That was the trigger. After calling the police, I tried to get back to normal. Daytime orders, safe routes. But the app is unforgiving. Hungry algorithms push you into the night, to the margins. 2 days later, another urgent one, 1:30 a.m. Groceries for a surprise party at a seedy motel in the port. The place reeked of salt and rot, containers stacked like marine graves. Bike parked, helmet in hand, I walk to room 13. The door is ajar, country music seeping out like a lament. I knock. Nothing. I push a little. Inside, a half-naked woman, fresh bruises on her arms like war maps. "Leave it on the table," she says, without looking at me, her voice flat as a frozen lake. Behind her, on the bed, a man dozes, a revolver within reach on the nightstand. His eyes open for a second, red as embers, and he growls, "What are you looking at, messenger?" I fly out, my heart in my throat. On the bike, I call 911 again, but hang up before I finish. Evidence? Just intuition. That night, dreams of muffled gunshots and blood-splattering supermarket bags. The tension builds like fog. Every beep is a bomb. Remember the one at the pharmacy at 3 a.m. Antibiotics and condoms for an address in the suburbs. I arrive. Impeccable house, soft lights. But the woman who opens the door has glassy eyes, pupils dilated like abysses. "Thank you," she murmurs, but her hand trembles as she takes the bag. I hear voices inside. Male, low, threatening. "Tell him to go away, bitch." I close the door, but not before seeing the bruise blooming on her cheek, purple like a poisonous flower. I speed away, paranoia gnawing at me. Are they following me? In the rearview mirror, a black sedan appears and disappears around curves. Real or shadow? I get home, sweep the doors, sleep with a baseball bat by my side. The next day, I search for the address in the local news. Nothing. But I know. The city feels alive now, breathing evil. Innocent seeming requests take a dark turn. The one for candy for sick children in a trailer park. I open the screen door, and the smell hits me. Urine, fear, something putrid. Pale children stare from dirty cots, mother with bandaged arms. Father is working late, she says, but in the kitchen, Polaroid photos. Her tied up, eyes pleading. I flee, dropping a piece of candy in the mud. That night, I cry for the first time in years, or the worst, before iron. Delivery of wilted flowers to a loft in the Arts District. 4 a.m., torrential rain. I climb up soaked stairs, pedals stuck to my boots like coagulated blood. Door open, inside a chaotic studio, canvases splattered with red. An artist, naked, painting frantically. For my muse, she says, but her eyes are empty, her arms scratched with fresh cuts. Behind her, a man in the shadows, smoking, palette knife in hand. Join the inspiration, he laughs. I run down the stairs, slippery as open veins. On the street, vomit in the rain. 2 days later, her posthumous exhibition. Suicide, they say. I say, push. These moments stick like splinters. I don't sleep. Caffeine and paranoia are my companions. The app rates me low for delays, but how do you explain stopping at every door, listening to breaths behind the wood? Let's go back to Hierro. Weeks later, I testified. The courtroom was an amphitheater of indifference, judges with tired eyes, victims who stammered. She, the woman who made the request, was named Elena, 72 years old, a widow for a decade. He, her son. He came back from prison, drugs in his veins, rage in his fist. He beat her for money, for space, for existing. She used the app because he monitored her phone. Sick was the code for help. I was the weak link in her chain. On the stand, I looked at her. Bruises fading, but terror still in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He, handcuffed, spat at me. "Busybody. I'll find you." I sweated under the borrowed tie. That night, I moved apartments. Triple locks, camera on the door, but terror can't be locked away. Now, every delivery is a sinister ritual. Take last night, 11 p.m., Italian dinner for a penthouse downtown, silent elevator, numbers rising like heartbeats. Door 1204. I open it, and luxury hits me, marble, crystal. But she, the wife, has chapped lips, a fake smile. "Honey, the delivery guy," she says into the void. Behind her, on the balcony, he smokes. The city at his feet like a conquered kingdom. His eyes fix on me. "Generous tip if you leave quickly." I go down, elevator descending like a coffin. On the motorcycle, I Google local philanthropist, abuse scandals silenced with checks, or the one with the mysterious box. Do not open, special delivery. Address at the docks, midnight. The box weighs like a small body, ticks slightly. Clock? Bomb? I leave it at the door of a rusty boat, but I hear voices. "Shut up, or I'll put you in there with him." I run away, imagining bodies wrapped in plastic floating in the river. The tension is constant, a live wire under my skin. Details I once ignored now suffocate me. The creak of a loose board like a neck breaking. The drip of a distant faucet like endless tears. The silence after the doorbell rings that hides clenched fists. A week after Hierro, an order took me back to the neighborhood. Not the same one, but close. Calle del Occido 22. Fast food for a family emergency. I arrive, my heart racing. Similar house, peeling walls, flickering light. Doorbell, male voice. "Leave it." But I hear in the background, a child crying, slaps like distant gunshots. I look through the broken window. A child curled up in a corner, a father raising his hand. I speed up, call the police again. They save the boy. But the father escapes, swears revenge on social media. My photo circulates in dark forums, the delivery gossip. Now I live on the run. I change routes, turn off the lights at home, but the app always finds me. Last night, liquor order at 2 a.m. at a motel. Room 9, door ajar, moans that are not pleasure. I look, woman tied to the bed, blindfolded, man laughing with bottle in hand. Join us or leave. I run, stumble in the hallway, roll down the stairs. New bruises but alive. These sinister moments accumulate like debts. Details that burn. Bruised skin sinking under fingers. The stench of sweaty fear. Eyes that scream when the mouth cannot. Disturbing, because they are not fiction. They are human. Parents who devour their children. Lovers who clip wings. Neighbors who bury secrets under smiles. And me? I am the damned witness. Each delivery a trial. I save lives, but I lose pieces of my own. The app sends me notifications. Great job. 5 stars. But the stars are cold like eyes in the dark. If you read this or hear it on YouTube, the next time you order something at midnight, think about the delivery person. They could be your lifesaver, or your grave if they don't look back. My name is Vesper Turner. I'm 32 years old, and until 8 months ago, I lived in a 2014 Ford Transit Connect, converted into a mini motorhome while making grocery deliveries throughout the Seattle area. It wasn't the life plan I had imagined when I graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in graphic design, but the pandemic had destroyed the creative industry. Rent in Seattle had become impossible, and living in a van was the only way to stay afloat while working as a freelance contractor. The van was my office, my home, my refuge. I had equipped it with the essentials: a small mattress, smart storage, LED lights, a portable heater for cold Seattle nights, and, crucially for my work, a high-quality dash cam mounted on the windshield. The camera not only recorded while I was driving, but also had a parking mode that activated with movement. It was my insurance against accidents, my evidence in case of theft, my silent witness. I never thought it would become the window someone would use to invade every moment of my life. The delivery that changed everything was on a Tuesday in March. Nothing about it seemed unusual when I accepted the order on the app. Customer, apartment 2304, Emerald Tower in downtown Seattle. One of those new luxury buildings with concierge service, 24/7 security, and apartments starting at $37,500 a month. I slept in a van in different parking lots around the city every night. The irony was not lost on me. The order was simple: organic items from Whole Foods, almond milk, quinoa, kale, wild Alaskan salmon, fresh blueberries, the kind of shopping done by people who had never had to choose between eating and paying for gas. Total, $247.83. My tip, $15. Generous to some, miserable considering the value of the order. But I couldn't be selective. Every delivery counted. I loaded the bags into my van and drove downtown. It was midday, and Seattle traffic was its usual nightmare of endless construction and lost tourists. But I knew the routes. After 2 years of doing this, I could navigate the city better than most natives. The Emerald Tower rose 30 stories above 4th Avenue, all glass and shiny steel, reflecting Seattle's perpetual gray clouds. I parked in the loading zone, showed my delivery ID to the security guard, an older man named Hiroshi, who recognized me from previous deliveries and greeted me with a wave, and took the elevator to the 23rd floor. The hallway on the 23rd floor was exactly what you'd expect. Thick carpet that muffled your footsteps, soft but perfect lighting, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than my entire van, polished metal door numbers, 2301, 2300U, 2303. 2304 was at the end of the hall. I rang the doorbell. Silence. I rang again. Nothing. I checked the app. There was a note from the customer. Leave at door. Do not knock. Thank you. No contact instructions were common, especially since the pandemic. It wasn't unusual. I left the 3 bags of groceries neatly lined up by the door, took a photo as proof of delivery, standard protocol, and marked the order as complete on my app. The app immediately gave me my next assignment: Target on Capitol Hill, delivery in 40 minutes. I accepted and headed back to the elevator. It wasn't until I was back in my van, checking my phone before starting the engine, that I saw the notification. A message, but not from the delivery app. It was from an unknown number. "Thanks for the delivery. Now come get yours." My stomach clenched. Probably spam. Scammers getting phone numbers from sold lists. I was about to block it when a second message arrived. This time it was a photo. It took me a full 3 seconds to process what I was seeing, then another 5 to believe it was real. It was me, in my van, sleeping on the mattress I had set up in the back. The photo was from above, looking down from the angle of the windshield. Exactly the angle of my dash cam. I was wearing the same t-shirt I had on at that moment. My headphones were on the dashboard where I had left them that morning. The photo was from the night before. It had to be, but the dash cam only recorded when it detected movement. And it was password protected. And only I had access to the files, which were stored on an SD card that I checked weekly. Or so I thought. My hands were shaking as I typed, "Who is this?" The reply came in seconds. "Someone who knows where you sleep. Someone who has been watching." My blood ran cold. I looked around the Emerald Tower parking lot. Parked cars, people walking, the security guard in his booth. Everything normal. But suddenly, every person was a potential threat. Every window could have eyes watching me. Another message. "You're good at your job, Vesper. Punctual, polite, predictable." How did they know my name? Well, it was on my public profile on the delivery app. But predictable, that implied observation, study, time. "What do you want?" I typed, my thumb barely functioning. "I want you to know that I see you. Always. When you park behind the Safeway in Queen Anne. When you use the bathroom at Starbucks on Pike Place every morning at 7:15. When you sleep in the Whole Foods parking lot on Capitol Hill on Tuesdays and Thursdays because they know you're there, making deliveries and don't bother you." Every detail was correct. Perfect. Frighteningly accurate. My entire routine, the routine I had carefully developed over 2 years to survive as a functional homeless person in Seattle, had been mapped, documented, known. You have a scar on your left shoulder. You got it when you were 12, falling off a bike. You call your mother Reverie every Sunday at 2 p.m. without fail, but you never tell her you live in your van because you don't want to worry her. Your ex-boyfriend, Stellan, owes you $3,400 that you'll never get back. Your bank account has $847 in it right now. I couldn't breathe. How? The scar was on my social media profile from years ago, but the rest, my mother's name, the Sunday call, my ex, my bank account. Someone had hacked more than my dash cam. They had hacked my entire life. "What do you want?" I typed again, my mental voice almost screaming. "Nothing. Yet. I just wanted you to know that you're not as alone as you think, that when you think no one sees you, I see you, and soon we're going to meet. But don't worry, it won't be today. Today I'm just planting the seed. Today you begin to understand that your life belongs to me more than it belongs to you." I started the van with trembling hands and pulled out of the parking lot so fast I almost hit a pedestrian. I needed to move. I needed to get away from that building, from that place where I had left the groceries, where everything had started to fall apart. As I drove aimlessly around Seattle trying to process, more messages arrived. A photo of my van parked outside a Target 3 days ago. Another of me eating a sandwich in a park last week. Another of me filling up on gas yesterday. And another. And another. Dozens of photos. Weeks of surveillance. All from angles that suggested they had been following me, photographing me, documenting my every move without my knowledge. And then the video arrived. It was from my dash cam. Definitely. I could see the angle, the timestamp in the corner. but it wasn't a clip I had seen before. It showed the inside of my van. I was sleeping. The date said it was from 4 days ago. The video continued for 12 minutes. Just me, breathing quietly, completely vulnerable, while the camera watched me. And then, in the last second of the video, a hand appeared in the frame. Just a hand, wearing a black glove, reaching toward the camera. Then the screen went black. Someone had been inside my van. They had been close enough to touch the camera. To touch me. While I slept. I slammed on the brakes at the side of the road, barely managing to stop myself from throwing up. I opened the door and emptied my stomach into the gutter as traffic passed by, indifferent to my collapse. When? When had they been inside? How had they gotten in? I checked the back door of the van. Locked. The side doors. Locked. The locks showed no signs of forced entry. But that didn't mean anything. A good thief could pick car locks in seconds, and whoever was doing this to me was clearly good at what they did. My phone rang. Another message. I bet you're wondering how I got in. It was easy. Easier than you think. Your rear lock opens with a simple hook tool. It took me 15 seconds. You were asleep for 23 minutes while I was there. You could have done anything, but I just watched. This time, I was going to faint. The world was spinning. This couldn't be happening. Why? I typed. Why me? The reply took longer this time. 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. Because you're perfect. A person who lives on the margins. No fixed address. No constant witnesses. No one who would notice if you disappeared for a day. Or 2. Or more. And because I can. Because I found a way into your digital life, and that gave me the keys to everything else. I called the police. Of course, I called the police. An operator named Juniper took my report with a professionally reassuring voice that did nothing to reassure me. Miss Turner, I understand you're scared. Are you in a safe place now? I'm in my van. I didn't even know where I was. I'd driven without thinking. I looked around. Somewhere in Capitol Hill. Can you go somewhere with people? A police station. A friend's house. I didn't have any friends in Seattle. Not really. Acquaintances, regular customers, but no one close enough to say, someone is stalking me and I need to stay on your couch. And I definitely couldn't go to my mother's house in Spokane. Not without admitting that I'd been living in my van for 2 years. I can go to a station, I finally said. Good. Go to the East Precinct station on 12th Avenue. Tell them I spoke to you. We're going to open a case. I went. I showed them the messages, the photos, the video. 2 detectives, a woman named Saskia and a man named Theron, took my statement. This is cyberstalking and stalking, Saskia said, her tone serious. And if they entered your vehicle without permission, that's trespassing. Possibly attempted assault as well, given the threatening context. Can you trace them? From the phone number? Theron shook his head. Probably using an anonymous texting app or a VoIP number. We can try for a warrant, but these services are often based overseas and don't cooperate. Do you have any idea who it might be? No, I've never seen anyone suspicious. I never noticed anyone following me. Enemies? Ex-partners? I thought of Stellan. My ex had been manipulative, emotionally abusive, but this seemed beyond his level of sophistication, and he had been out of my life for a year. Not that I know of. Anyone at your job, customers? I made dozens of deliveries a week, hundreds of customers. I never saw most of them, just left packages at their doors. How could I know who? It's possible, I admitted, but I don't know who. The detectives exchanged glances. Miss Turner, I'm going to be honest with you, Saskia said. Without further evidence, no specific threats of violence, no physical attempts at contact, it's going to be difficult to do much. We can document this. We can patrol areas where you usually park, but we can't provide 24-hour protection. So, what am I supposed to do? Change your routines. Don't sleep in the same places. Consider staying with friends or family temporarily. Get a new phone, new credit cards, new passwords for everything, and if you receive more threats, report it immediately. I did everything they suggested. I bought a new cheap phone and transferred only the essential contacts. I changed every password I had. I closed my social media accounts. I bought new locks for all the doors on the van. I removed the dash cam completely and replaced it with a new one from a different brand. For 3 days, nothing happened. No messages, no photos, no videos. I started to think that maybe it was over. Maybe it had just been a bored psychopath. Maybe they had found a new target. Then, on the 5th day, I received a package. There was no return address, just my name and general delivery at the post office where I occasionally picked up my mail. How did they know I used general delivery? I guess at this point, I shouldn't be surprised. Inside the package was a USB drive. Every instinct told me not to plug it in, to take it to the police, to throw it away. But I needed to know. I plugged it into my laptop at Starbucks, not in my van. At least I had learned something. With my VPN activated and every security program I could quickly download, there was only one file, a 20-minute video. I played it. It was a compilation, clips of me over the last 6 months, not just from my dash cam, but from security cameras at stores where I shopped, traffic cameras that had captured my van, even what appeared to be recordings from drones following me from above, and audio, phone conversations with my mother, conversations with myself while driving, even audio of me sleeping, breathing, occasionally talking in my sleep. Someone had compiled 6 months of total surveillance. They had built a complete profile of my life, and now they were showing it to me, testing how much they knew, how much control they had. The video ended with a text message on a black screen. Now you understand. Your life is transparent to me. Every move, every word, every vulnerable moment. And soon we're going to use that information. Soon you're going to do exactly what I tell you to do. Because if you don't, all this information, your bank accounts, your social security number, your passwords, your real-time location, becomes public. Or worse, sold to the highest bidder. This wasn't just stalking. It was extortion. Preparation for something worse. I took the USB drive to the police. Saskia and Theron had it checked out with their cybercrime department. This is sophisticated, admitted the technician, a young man named Cassian. Whoever did this has serious hacking knowledge. They probably compromised your phone months ago with malware. That gave them access to your camera, microphone, GPS location, everything. From there, they could access your other accounts, email, bank, social media. How? How did they install malware on my phone? Did you click on any strange links? Did you download any suspicious apps? He had downloaded dozens of apps. For deliveries, for tracking mileage, for finding free parking, for mapping public restrooms. Living in a van meant constantly relying on your phone to survive. I don't know. Maybe. Then, that's probably their entry point. A fake or compromised app that you installed without realizing it. Can you find out who did this? Cassian hesitated. We can try to trace the digital signatures, but if they're good, and they're clearly good, they'll have used multiple layers of anonymization. Tor, VPNs, proxy servers. It could take months. And that's if agencies outside our state or country cooperate. Months. Months of living with this terror, this uncertainty. There's something else you should know, Saskia added. We've been investigating and found other cases. 4 in the last 2 years. All gig economy workers. All living in precarious situations. Vans, shared rooms, cheap studios. All were hacked, surveilled, extorted. And what happened to them? 2 paid what they were asked for, Bitcoin, untraceable. 1 disappeared, probably fled the city. The 4th, she paused. The 4th committed suicide, left a note saying he couldn't live being watched constantly. The weight of those words crushed me. This wasn't just a random stalker. This was someone systematic. Someone who hunted the vulnerable because we were easy targets. because our dependence on technology to survive made us perfectly exposed. Why us? I asked. Why delivery workers? The theory, Theron said, is that they use the delivery apps to identify targets. They look at your profiles, your ratings, your histories. Profiles with lots of night deliveries, predictable routes, which probably indicate complete dependence on the job. Those are ideal targets. Then they use social engineering and basic hacking to compromise your devices. Basically, Saskia added bitterly, your job makes you vulnerable, and this predator exploits that. I quit deliveries the next day. I couldn't go on. Not when every order could be another trap. Not when every customer could be him, whoever he was, waiting. But that meant no income, which meant I couldn't afford gas, food, the storage unit where I kept my few possessions. My already precarious life became unsustainable. I had to call my mother. I had to admit everything, the van, the harassment, the fear. She cried. Then she bought me a bus ticket to Spokane. Come home, she said. We can figure this out, but first, just come home. I sold the van. I couldn't bear to look at it, knowing it had been invaded, that it had been my prison without my knowing it. I bought a one-way bus ticket. I packed a single suitcase with clothes and a few photos. Everything else, the new dash cam, most of my books, the things I had accumulated in 2 years of nomadic living, I donated. I needed to start completely over. No digital history, no trace. The day before I left, I received one last message from a new number, but I knew who it was. Wise decision. Running away is smart. But remember, wherever you go, we carry our phones, and phones can be hacked. So really, are you escaping, or are you just taking your prison with you? I blocked the number. I turned off my phone. I kept it off for the entire 6-hour bus ride to Spokane. But they were right, because even now, 8 months later, living with my mother, working at a local bookstore, using a new phone with a new line and a new company, I still feel the eyes. I still check every notification with terror. I still cover the cameras on all my devices with tape. I still avoid apps as much as possible. I still wake up in the middle of the night convinced that someone is standing next to my bed watching. My therapist, yes, I finally have one, courtesy of my mother's health insurance, says it's PTSD, that my brain was traumatized by the total violation of privacy, by the feeling of being completely exposed without consent. She's probably right, but knowledge doesn't make the fear go away. Because the truth is this, they never caught whoever did this to me. The detectives in Seattle said the case went cold. No new leads, no new incidents. Whoever it was, they moved on to new targets or became more careful. And that means they're still out there. Hunting, watching, waiting. Maybe they forgot about me. Maybe they found more interesting victims. Or maybe, as that last message suggested, they're just waiting. Watching from the digital distance we all carry in our pockets. Sometimes I search the news. Stalking Seattle gig economy workers. Hacker extorts delivery workers, looking for evidence that they were caught, or evidence of new victims. I find silence, which is somehow worse than finding something, because silence means it's still a secret, that it's still working, that somewhere, someone else is sleeping peacefully while compromised cameras watch them. Someone else is making deliveries without realizing that their every move is being mapped. Someone else is about to receive that first message. Thanks for the delivery. Now come get yours. And there's nothing I can do to warn them. The delivery app still exists. It's still used by thousands of workers desperate for income. And the company, when I tried to warn them about the vulnerability, sent me a generic corporate response about how they take security seriously and are constantly improving their protocols. But they didn't change anything. Why would they? Making the app truly secure would cost money, and publicly acknowledging that there was a predator using their platform to hunt victims would be a public relations disaster. So they continue, and he continues, and the next victim has probably already been selected, already been compromised, already being watched without knowing it. That's the part that keeps me awake at night. Not my own trauma, though that's there, but the knowledge that I failed to stop him. That my escape was just my escape, that the monster is still hunting. Detective Saskia calls me occasionally with updates, which always amount to no news, no progress, case open but inactive. The last time I spoke to her 3 weeks ago, she sounded defeated. These crimes are difficult, she admitted. The perpetrators are ghosts. They operate entirely online, and the victims, no offense, are often people society already ignored. Precarious workers, homeless people, immigrants, people whose disappearances aren't news. She was right. I had been invisible when I lived in my van. No one really saw me. That's why I was a perfect target, and that's why he keeps getting away with it. Now, when I see delivery drivers in their worn-out cars, on their bikes, rushing between deliveries, I want to stop them. I want to warn them. Cover your cameras, change your passwords. Don't trust the technology that keeps you connected, because that same technology can be turned against you. But I don't. Because I would sound crazy. Because they are too busy surviving to listen to warnings about invisible threats. So I just watch them drive away, carrying the same vulnerability I carried, living on the margins where predators hunt. And I hope they have better luck than I did. Or at least, I hope that if what happened to me happens to them, they have somewhere to run. Because I learned something from all this. Privacy is a luxury. Security is a privilege. And those of us living on the edge, relying on technology to survive, without the resources to protect ourselves, are the most vulnerable to those who know how to exploit our needs. The message was clear. Now come for yours. My delivery never arrived. Only terror. Only loss. Only the permanent understanding that I will never, ever truly be anonymous again. Truly safe. Truly free. Because once you've been the prey, once you've felt those invisible eyes, you can never forget that at any moment, through any screen, someone could be watching. And this time, they might not tell you until it's too late. That's my story. My warning. My trauma that I carry like a second skin. And if you ever get a message that says, "Thanks for the delivery, now come get yours," run. Don't wait to understand. Don't wait to see how deep it goes. Just run. Because by the time you understand, they will have taken everything from you. And getting your life back from the digital clutches of a ghost is nearly impossible. I was lucky. I escaped. But the next victim might not be. And that's what terrifies me the most. My name is Marco, and I've been the invisible ghost of this city for 4 years. Home deliveries, pizzas arriving hot at parties that reek of regret, packages hiding secrets in brown boxes with no return address, and those midnight pharmacy orders that scream emergency without saying it. I don't look for heroes in the mirror, just paid bills and a mattress that doesn't smell like mold. But on September 22nd, 2025, a night that smelled of rotten autumn and broken promises, everything went wrong. A beep on my phone at 11:47 p.m., and suddenly, I was the pawn in a game of bloody chess. I was on the edge of the suburbs, where houses stick together like teeth in a loose jaw. The app spat out the order. Strong painkillers, sterile bandages, a bottle of disinfectant that weighed like lead in the plastic bag. Address, 112 Willow Avenue, a neighborhood of manicured lawns and fake smiles where porch lights flicker like nervous eyes. Customer note, urgent, sudden illness, leave at door if no answer. Triple payment. My instinct, that tingling at the back of my neck that has gotten me out of alleys with knives flashing, stirred. But the cold was seeping into my bones and rent doesn't wait for demons. I picked up the package at the 24-hour pharmacy, a dive lit by fluorescent tubes that buzzed like dying flies. The pharmacist, a guy with dark circles under his eyes like bruises, stared at me as he scanned the opioids. "Be careful with this, kid. It kills more than it cures." I nodded. stuffing everything into my waterproof backpack. I went out to the parking lot where my scooter, a beat-up Honda with a brake that squealed like a whale, waited in the rain that was beginning to fall in gray curtains. The engine coughed as it started, and I launched myself into the night, headlights cutting through the darkness like blunt blades. The road was a tunnel of shadows, an elevated highway flanked by pine trees whispering secrets to the wind, exits leading to mazes of cul-de-sacs where parked cars looked like sleeping sentinels. I arrived at Avenida de los Sauces after midnight, the neighborhood a mirage of suburban normality, two-story houses with double garages and rusty swings in gardens that no one uses. Number 112 was at the end of the block, a red brick house with vines climbing the walls like swollen veins. The lights were off, except for a dim glow filtering through the living room curtains. No cars in the driveway, just a mailbox overflowing with wet flyers. I parked the scooter at the curb, the engine off, leaving a silence that clung to my skin like fog. I lowered the bag, the plastic crinkling under my soaked gloves. I walked along the gravel path, my footsteps muffled by the rain splashing in puddles like salty tears. The air smelled of damp earth and something metallic, like fresh rust. I climbed the 3 steps of the porch, the wood creaking under my boots like old bones. The doorbell was a gold button, smudged with blurred fingerprints. I pressed it. A hollow ding-dong echoed inside, followed by nothing. Absolute silence, the kind that makes you wonder if the world is still turning. I waited, counting heartbeats. 1, 2, 30. The app pressed me. Delivery time, 2 minutes. I knocked on the door with my knuckles, a dry tap-tap that bounced off the varnished wood. Nothing. I knocked again, harder, my pulse racing in my temples like a war drum. Then I heard it. A thud. From inside. Like a sack of flour falling from a high shelf, but heavier, more organic. Flesh against floor, bones muffled by carpet. My stomach sank. Seconds later, a groan, muffled, guttural, like air escaping from a broken bellows. It wasn't flu pain. It was pure agony, the kind that rips your soul out before your breath. "Sir?" I whispered, my voice breaking, pressing my ear against the door. The cold of the wood seeped into my cheek, and for a moment, I swore I heard ragged breathing on the other side. 2. One quick, panting, the other slow, like a predator sizing up its prey. The doorknob turned on its own, a metallic click that made my skin crawl. The door opened a crack, barely 4 inches, enough for a gust of warm air, laden with sweat and something coppery, to hit my face. He was there. A man in his 40s, pale as melted wax, eyes sunken into dark sockets that glowed with fever. White shirt, now splattered with dark red that spread like an evil flower from his chest to his waist. Trembling hands, one holding the doorknob, the other hidden in the shadows. I could smell him. Cheap cologne mixed with fresh blood, the stench that warns you that death has just dined. Before I could back away, his free hand shot out like a snake. He grabbed me by the collar of my jacket, pulling with a strength that didn't seem human. "Inside," he hissed, his voice hoarse, like gravel scraping his throat. The world tilted. I stumbled over the threshold, the pharmacy bag falling with a clatter of pills rolling across the floor. The door slammed shut behind me, and the bolt clicked into place like jaws snapping shut. The hallway was a narrow tunnel, walls lined with floral wallpaper that now seemed strangled by shadows. Dim lights from a floor lamp cast elongated silhouettes, like accusing fingers stretching down the hallway. "Shut up, or I'll kill you too," he muttered, pressing something cold and hard against my side. A kitchen knife, its serrated blade stained crimson, the edge still dripping onto my boot. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. His eyes, bloodshot, danced with panic and rage, his pupils dilated like bottomless wells. What's going on?" I stammered, my voice a thread, backing up until I bumped into a wooden console. Framed family photos shook, him smiling with a blonde woman, 2 small children in his arms. Now, the frame was crooked, glass cracked like a broken smile. He didn't answer. He just pushed, guiding me into the adjacent living room, where the air was thick, heavy with ozone and fear. The moan came again, weaker, from the sofa pushed up against the wall. There she was, the wife, I suppose, lying on her side, her wrinkled skirt pulled up to her thighs, a dark pool spreading beneath her head like an unholy halo. Blonde hair stuck to her temple with sweat and blood, lips parted in a rictus of eternal surprise. A blow to the temple, sunken like a crushed ripe fruit. She wasn't moving, but her chest rose and fell in irregular spasms. A thread of life hanging by a miracle. "God," I exclaimed, horror closing my throat. I tried to turn, to run, but he pinned me against the wall, the knife now at my jugular, the tip scratching my skin until a pearl of blood appeared. "Don't look. Don't say anything," he roared. Hot breath in my ear, splattered with saliva and hysteria. She betrayed me, with the neighbor. I found out tonight. I came to confront her, and she laughed. She laughed at me. His words were a broken torrent, pieces of a bloody puzzle. I saw it in flashes. Him bursting in, muffled screams, the porcelain vase shattered on the coffee table, pieces still glistening on the floor like scattered teeth. Her struggling, scratches on her forearms like maps of desperation. The final blow, driven by jealousy that burns hotter than acid. He dragged me to the floor, my knees hitting the soaked carpet. He ransacked my backpack, duct tape from the bandages which he tore with yellow teeth. "Hands behind your back." I obeyed, trembling, as he wrapped the tape around my wrists, rough pulls that cut off circulation. The plastic bit into my skin, a suffocating embrace. Then my ankles, tying me up like an animal for slaughter. He threw me on the floor, next to the sofa, face to face with her. Her eyes opened for a moment, glassy, focusing on me in a flicker of recognition. "Help. Me," she whispered, blood bubbling between her lips. He silenced her with a light, almost tender slap, like a father scolding a child. "Sleep, love. It will all be over soon." He left me there, in the darkness, the clock on the wall ticking like an executioner counting the hours. The rain hammered on the roof, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out my gasps. I tried to move, tape tearing at my hair, but I only managed to roll an inch, enough to smell his perfume mixed with iron. Hours stretched like rubber. Him pacing around the house, heavy footsteps climbing stairs, returning with a suitcase he dragged like a body. I heard drawers opening, papers tearing, wills, photos of lovers. Once, he stopped in front of me, knife in hand, tracing the blade across my cheek. "I could make it quick," he murmured, almost conversational. "One clean cut, and you'll join her. 2 less traitors." My bladder loosened a little, damp heat between my legs, but I bit back the panic, counting breaths so I wouldn't scream. The living room became a chamber of subtle torture, details that dug in like splinters, her blood dripping, forming a stream that lapped at my ear, warm and sticky. The buzzing of a mosquito drawn to the feast, landing on my forehead like a kiss of death. Shadows of branches lashing the window, looking like claws scraping glass. He talked to himself, fragments of madness. 10 years, Marco. 10 years washing my socks, cooking my dinners, and sleeping with that pig next door. I saw it in her eyes this afternoon when she went out into the garden. Guilty eyes. He laughed, a broken sound that bounced off the walls like ricocheting bullets. I tried to reason in whispers. "Sir, please. The police will come. The app tracks GPS. Let me go, and no one will know." Lie. GPS turns off on manual deliveries, but his panic was fuel. He spat at me. "Liar. Everyone lies. Like her." And he kicked me in the ribs, a dull thud that knocked the air out of my lungs, my vision blurring into red stars. The night dragged on, an hourglass of agony. I heard distant sirens, illusion, reality, but they faded like echoes. She stopped moaning around 2 a.m., her chest motionless, her eyes fixed on the ceiling as if accusing the wrong god. Hot tears rolled down my cheeks, mixing with sweat. I thought about my life, the ex who left me for a guy with a new car, the nights alone in an apartment that smells like stale takeout, the dream of saving up for a motorcycle repair shop someday. All of that evaporated here, in this living room that smelled of betrayal and endings. He sat on the couch next to her corpse, drinking whiskey from a bottle he took from the bar. The liquid gurgled in his throat, and he burped, a profane sound. "Let's drink to fools, Marco," he said, raising the bottle toward me. The tape on my wrists loosened a little with sweat. I rubbed and rubbed until a thread broke. A sharp hope, but he got up, staggering, and saw me struggling. "Oh no," he roared, stepping on my hand with his heavy boot, my metacarpals crunching like dry twigs, blinding white pain. "Damn you." At 4:17 a.m., the doorbell rang. Ding-dong. My heart leapt. He froze, bottle falling and shattering into shards that pierced the carpet. "Shh," he hissed, knife raised. Footsteps on the porch, heavy, multiple, male voices low. "Police, open the door. We have a report of a disturbance." "How?" "The app doesn't track." But then I remembered. The neighbor. The lover. He must have heard the blow, the cut-off scream, and called anonymously. Fate, capricious, weaves invisible threads. He ran into the hallway, me struggling like crazy, tape tearing into strips. The front door creaked under battering rams, wood splintering like bones. Shouts, "Drop the weapon, get down." Gunshots, pop pop, acrid smoke filling the air. A heavy body fell nearby, gurgling. He, knife still in hand, chest pierced, glassy eyes fixed on me as if blaming me. The police stormed in, flashlights blinding me, boots trampling glass. Officer. Over. Here. Someone cut the tape, helped me sit up, blanket over my trembling shoulders. I vomited bile on the floor, mixing with blood. She lay still, covered with a sheet by a paramedic with an impassive face. "I'm sorry, son. We're too late for her." Dawn painted the living room pearl gray as I left, escorted to an ambulance. Bruises blooming on my skin like nightmarish tattoos. My swollen hand in a makeshift sling. Testimony at the police station. Hours of cold questions, watered-down coffee that tasted like cardboard. Crime of passion, they said. He, a middle-aged accountant, a history of jealousy documented in filed complaints. She, a schoolteacher, a secret affair with the neighbor, a harmless widower who now wept in protective custody. I got out alive, physically, but every doorbell now echoes that dull thud. Every door, a crack into darkness. I quit night deliveries. Now I work days in a warehouse, counting boxes instead of secrets. But the nights I dream of tape on skin, accusing eyes on the ceiling, and a moan no one should hear. If you order something for delivery at midnight, remember, the delivery person could be the next to hear what they shouldn't, and once you hear it, no silence can drown it out. God, even now, 3 years later, the simple beep of my phone at midnight makes me jump, as if someone had stuck an icy finger down my throat. My name is Thadwick Hale, Thad to those who know me, and even they don't really know me. And in the fall of 2022, when the maple leaves in the suburbs of Cleveland were turning red like coagulated blood, I was just another idiot pedaling against the wind for tips that barely covered the gas for my old Chevy pickup. 32 years old, divorced from a woman named Jolene who took the house and the dog, working for DoorDash because the steel mills closed before I could learn to weld. Shitty life, but predictable. Greasy pizza orders for Case Western students. Beers for lonely office workers in apartments that smell like burnt microwaves. Nothing that could prepare you for what I saw in that house at 147 Elmwood Drive. It was Tuesday, October 11th, around 10:45 p.m. The app vibrated on the passenger seat as I munched on a gas station sandwich in the parking lot of a giant eagle near Shaker Heights. The sky was a black blanket, dotted with stars that looked like rusty nails, and the wind from Lake Erie brought that damp cold that gets into your bones like an unwelcome guest. Screen lit up. Late-night dinner order, fried chicken from the local KFC, with extra gravy and a side of mashed potatoes that smelled like cardboard soaked in oil. Address 147, Elmwood Drive, Bay Village. A residential neighborhood of 1950s colonial homes with wide porches and two-car garages, where people like me, delivery drivers, are invisible until it rains and you need your order dry. Customer note: dinner for one. Urgent, please. Generous tip if you hand deliver and sign receipt. The base pay was decent, but that promise of generous whetted my appetite. On my good nights, a $20 tip meant cheap beer. On my bad nights, nothing. And it was cold. The kind of cold that seeped through my worn denim jacket, the kind that makes you dream of bonfires you never light. I accepted the order without thinking twice. Mistake number one. I picked up the bag at the KFC in Rocky River. The drive-thru a chaos of cars with humming heaters and impatient mothers yelling orders at kids in the back seat. The employee, a girl with a nose piercing and fake nails that clicked against the counter, handed me the bag with a tired smile. Careful, it's hot, and that gravy will leak if you don't cover it properly. I nodded, putting everything in the cooler box in my pickup truck, the steam rising like smoke from a freshly fired gun. The Chevy's engine coughed as it started, a 1998 relic with 200,000 miles and an exhaust that sounded like a chronic cold, and I sped west on I-90, headlights cutting through the fog rolling in from the lake like the breath of a sleeping giant. Bay Village is a mirage of suburban tranquility. Tree-lined streets with sidewalks cracked by rebellious roots. Houses with cedar shingles that creak in the rain, and that eternal smell of freshly cut grass mixed with smoke from chimneys. Elmwood Drive is a gentle curve at the end of Cahoon Road, flanked by the lake on one side and a forest of old elms on the other. Ironic, given the street's name with Dutch elm disease having cut down half of them in the 1970s. I arrived at 147 after 11, parking on the curb in front of a two-story house with a white brick facade and a porch that stretched out like an inviting tongue. Dim lights on the ground floor, a living room lamp filtering dirty yellow through threadbare lace curtains, and a bluish glow from what looked like the kitchen, like the flicker of a forgotten television. I turned off the engine, the silence falling heavy like a wet blanket. I climbed out of the pickup, my boots splashing in a puddle that reflected the moon in silvery fragments. The bag hung from my right hand, warm against my faded jeans, and the cold bit at my exposed ears. I'd lost my wool hat on a previous delivery, probably forgotten on the seat of an ungrateful customer. I climbed the 4 steps of the porch, the wood groaning under my 180-pound weight, as if the house protested the intrusion. The doorbell was a cracked porcelain button, surrounded by a wooden frame carved with floral motifs that now looked like swollen veins. I pressed it, a hollow ding-dong echoing inside, followed by a silence that stretched like rubber. I counted to 20, the steam from my breath clouding the air in front of me. The app reminded me, signature required for full tip. I knocked on the door with my knuckles, a dry tap-tap that bounced off the quiet night. Nothing. Just as I was about to leave the bag on the doormat, a faded rag with welcome embroidered in crooked letters, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, shuffling from the inner hallway as if someone were measuring every inch. The door creaked open on ungreased hinges, revealing a man in his 60s, stooped but not frail, standing nearly 6 feet tall if he stood up straight. His name was Eldridge Voss. I learned that later, when his name splattered the headlines of the Plain Dealer like poison, but at that moment, he was just a stranger with eyes sunk into shadowed sockets. Like dry wells, in a face furrowed with wrinkles that looked like maps of abandoned roads. His gray hair was slicked back with pomade. He wore a plaid flannel shirt buttoned up to the neck and corduroy pants that hung loosely from his waist. But it was his smile that chilled me more than the wind. Too wide, stretching thin lips over yellowed teeth, revealing pale gums as if he were holding a secret that made his jaw ache. "Good evening, son," he said, his voice soft as worn velvet, with a Midwestern accent that dragged the vowels like gravel under tires. He extended a gnarled hand, nails trimmed flush, but dirty around the edges. "You must be the courier. Thanks for coming out so late. Freezing out there, huh? Come in, come in. Just a second. The tip's inside, and I need you to sign the receipt. 50 extra if you do it fast." 50. The word stuck in my brain like a fishhook. On a night like this, it was a lifeline. Enough for gas, a decent dinner, maybe even a couple extra hours of sleep without worrying about the odometer. I hesitated at the threshold, instinct tugging. DoorDash rules said, curbside deliveries, no going inside. But the cold was seeping into my bones, and his smile seemed genuine, paternal, like an uncle offering you lemonade at a family picnic. "Just a minute, sir," I muttered, crossing the threshold before common sense could stop me. Mistake number 2. The hallway was a narrow tunnel, walls papered in a faded 1970s floral pattern, paint peeling from the corners like dead skin. The air inside was thick, heavy with a musty smell that hit me like a punch. Stale mold mixed with something sweet, like wilted flowers rotting in a forgotten vase. Dim lights from a floor lamp in the corner cast long shadows that danced with every creak of the settling house. He closed the door behind me with a soft click, too casual, and pointed to an antique desk by the stairs. There, the receipt. Pen in the inkwell. I signed quickly, scribbling my name, Thadwick Hale, with that K my mother insisted on adding because it sounds distinguished. While he stood too close, his breath smelling of stale mint and something metallic underneath. The receipt was a yellowed, crumpled piece of paper with dates scribbled in blue ink that looked like dried blood. "Perfect," he purred, pulling a wad of bills from his back pocket. 20, 10, 10, 20, counting slowly as if savoring the ritual. He handed them to me, but when I looked up, his smile had widened another millimeter, his eyes fixed on me as if he were measuring my neck for a suit. "Thank you, Mr. Voss," I said, putting the money in my pocket without looking at him, turning toward the door. But something stopped me. A sound, subtle, coming from the kitchen at the end of the hall. A drip, slow, rhythmic, like a poorly closed faucet. And underneath, a stronger stench, the sweetness now tinged with copper. Blood, I recognized instinctively, from years of changing flat tires punctured by broken glass on the road. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice higher than I wanted it to be, involuntary steps toward the open kitchen. He tensed behind me, but didn't stop me. "My wife had an accident this afternoon," he murmured, his tone flat as stagnant water. "She fell on the basement stairs. Nothing serious, but the doctor prescribed rest. Come in, see if you want. I'll offer you a coffee before you leave. It's so cold." Morbid curiosity, or perhaps that knot in my stomach telling me to get out now, but my feet moved forward. The kitchen was a relic of a bygone era. Cracked yellow linoleum, dark oak cabinets with rusted brass handles, and a formica table covered with dirty dishes that no one had washed in days. The blue light came from an old television on the counter, tuned to an infomercial for kitchen knives that cut through cans like butter. But I didn't look at the screen. I looked at the floor. A red puddle. Not ketchup from dinner, not spilled wine. Too thick, too dark, spreading from the center island toward the basement door like a slow river of mercury. Fresh footprints, men's boots, large size, uneven steps splattered with drops, leading straight to the half-open trapdoor. The dripping came from down there. Plick, plick, plick. A muffled echo against damp concrete. My pulse thundered in my ears, peripheral vision picking up details my brain refused to acknowledge. A soaked rag in the sink, stained crimson. A butcher knife on the cutting board, blade gleaming but with fresh nicks, as if it had been sawing bone. "Oh God," I whispered, turning toward him. Voss stood in the kitchen doorway, blocking the hallway. That smile now a rictus that didn't reach his eyes. Pupils dilated like black pinheads, breathing deeply through his nose, like a wolf sniffing fear. "It's nothing, son," he said, his voice dropping an octave, his right hand sinking into his pants pocket. See? Just a little spill. My Mary Bell. That's my wife's name, Maribel Quist, before we got married. Cut herself on a canning jar. I went down to clean it up. Come help me close the basement door before the smell comes up. Mary Bell. The name floated in my mind like an omen, but panic was already bubbling in my chest, hot and acidic, rising up my throat. This was no accident. The tracks were fresh, the pool still shiny, not yet fully coagulated. And under the island, peeking out of an overflowing trash can, was the edge of a stained latex glove, hastily discarded. I tried to back away, but my boot slipped on a sticky patch near the puddle. Spattered blood, still warm, and I stumbled against the counter, my elbow hitting the television, which flickered and died with a click. He moved then, quick for his age, like a released spring. His hand shot out of his pocket with a roll of duct tape, gray, industrial, the kind you use to seal windows in storms, and his other fist clenched around something that glinted in the kitchen light. Keys. No, not keys. A flathead screwdriver, handle wrapped in cloth to leave no fingerprints, sharp tip stained with a red that wasn't paint. "Don't scream, Thadwick," he hissed, using my full name as if he had savored it beforehand. "How do you know my—" The words died in my mouth. The app. It showed driver names to verified customers. He had planned it. Terror exploded in my chest like a grenade, my vision tunneling to his eyes. Cold now, calculating, no trace of the paternal smile. I shoved the island with my shoulder, knocking over the trash can, which rolled away with a clatter of cans and wet rags, and ran into the hallway. He growled, a low animal sound, and his hand brushed my jacket, pulling my collar so hard it made me stumble. I fell to my knees on the linoleum in the hallway, inhaling dust and that metallic stench that now permeated everything. "Just stay still, son. It's easier if you don't fight, like the others." The others. The phrase dug into my spine like ice. I heard a scratch behind me, him unwinding the tape, footsteps approaching, and I rolled, kicking his shin with my boot. He gasped, staggering, and that was enough. I jumped to my feet, shoulder ramming the front door like a linebacker in a Browns game. The lock gave way with a crack, wood splintering around the frame, and I stumbled out onto the porch, cold air slapping my face like a dose of reality. I ran, boots pounding steps, gravel crunching under my feet like breaking bones, the KFC bag abandoned in the hallway like a rejected offering. The night swallowed me. Elmwood Drive, a tunnel of shadows, streetlights spaced every 50 yards, casting yellow circles that didn't reach the bushes. I heard the house door slam behind me. "Thadwick, come back, don't be stupid." His voice now a hoarse roar, heavy footsteps descending the porch. I looked back once, a tall silhouette silhouetted against the interior light, screwdriver raised like a deadly antenna, advancing with determined but not frantic steps. He wasn't running, he was hunting. My pickup truck was 20 yards away, keys in my pocket. Thank God I hadn't left them in the ignition like an idiot. I zigzagged down the street, lungs burning with every breath, Lake Erie roaring in the distance like a chorus of silent witnesses. A neighbor, a house across the way, lights out except for an illuminated porch, opened her door when I shouted, "Help! Call 911, killer at 147. The woman, wrapped in a pink bathrobe, gasped and recoiled, but she dialed the phone, her shrill voice cutting through the night. "Police?" "Yes. Bay Village, Elmwood Drive. A man chasing another man with a knife." Voss was closer now, maybe 15 yards away, his ragged breathing audible in the suburban silence. A neighborhood where the worst crime was stealing kids' bikes. I felt his hand brush my back again, nails scratching fabric, and I veered sharply toward a lilac hedge, branches lashing my face like whips. Burning scratches on my cheeks, warm blood dripping, but I kept going, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. The pickup truck, driver's door open to the wind, interior a sanctuary of worn seats and the smell of old cigarettes. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut with a bang that shook the frame, keys jangling in the ignition. The engine roared to life on the third try, damn weak battery, and I floored the accelerator, tires screeching against wet asphalt, launching myself toward Cahoon Road. In the rear-view mirror, Voss stood in the middle of the street, a motionless figure under a streetlight, screwdriver slowly lowering at his side. His smile returned ghostly in the distance, as if it were all a game that I had lost by running away. Sirens wailed in the distance, red and blue flashing at the end of the block, and I turned the corner, hot tears mixing with sweat on my face. I didn't stop until I reached the Westlake police station 15 minutes south, where I burst in panting, my trembling hands pounding on the reception desk. 147 Elmwood, man, blood basement. The words came out in fragments, but the sergeant on duty, a burly guy named Harlan Fisk with a toothbrush mustache, sat me down, gave me water from a fountain that tasted like chlorine, and called in a SWAT team. They questioned me for hours. Details about the pool, the screwdriver, his name, Eldridge Voss, confirmed by the receipt I had signed like an idiot. At dawn, the sun staining the lake an innocent pink, they took me back to the site. The house was a hive of activity now, yellow tape fluttering like snakes. WKYC3 news vans parked on the shoulder, reporters with microphones lurking like vultures. Voss had surrendered without resistance, sitting on the porch with his hands up when the first patrol cars arrived, muttering about accidents and unexpected guests. But the basement, God, the basement was hell-sealed under concrete. I went down with the detectives, flashlight trembling in my hand, the air down there thick as syrup, the stench of decay hitting me like a wall, splintered wooden stairs, each step creaking like a last breath. Below, a makeshift workshop, workbenches stained with rust and something worse, tools lined up on shelves, pruning saws, hammers with deformed heads, bags of cement stacked in a corner. In the center, the body of Maribel Voss, half wrapped in a plastic tarp, her throat slit cleanly, explaining the pool of blood upstairs. It wasn't her first accident. Behind a false panel in the wall, discovered by a police dog sniffing like a possessed bloodhound, they found remains, bones wrapped in cloth, later identified as those of 3 women who had disappeared in the last 2 years. Jolene Whitaker, a 28-year-old waitress from Parma who ran off with a lover. Eudora Klein, a 62-year-old retired librarian from Lakewood who tripped in her bathtub. And Leora Beach, a 41-year-old nurse from Fairview Park who never made it home from the night shift. All lured by the same trap: late delivery orders, notes promising generous tips, invitations to come in for a moment to sign. Voss, a widower since 2015 but pretending to marry Belle as a living wife to curious neighbors, had turned his home into a slaughterhouse. He had strangled or cut them in the kitchen, dragged them to the basement to clean up, and buried pieces in the elm grove behind the house, wrapped in recycled DoorDash bags. Ironic, cruel. My signature on that receipt had almost caught him before, but I was the first to escape, the witness who broke his routine of lethal kindness. The days that followed were a blur of headlines and therapy that insurance didn't cover. Delivery hero foils Bay Village serial killer, screamed the Cleveland Scene, with my grainy driver's license photo next to Voss's, his mugshot smile frozen in perpetual smugness. Interviews with the FBI, profiles of killers who use everyday trust as bait, men like Voss who collect lives like postage stamps. I was given a local police medal, a $5,000 reward check from a witness fund, but money doesn't erase the nightmares. Dreams where I sign the receipt and the tape wraps around my neck, or I wake up with the dripping in my ears, as if the basement followed me home. I quit DoorDash that week, selling the pickup truck for a day job at a hardware store in North Ridgeville. I sell drills and duct tape, an irony that turns my stomach every shift. But the extra tips, God, they make me nauseous now. Every folded bill in my pocket evokes that gnarled hand, that smile that hid graves. I live in a cramped apartment in Westlake now, with 3 deadbolts and a registered handgun in the nightstand. I learned to shoot at a range in Illyria, my hands shaking less with each bullet in the target. I'm dating a woman named Cressida Lang, a 35-year-old accountant with green eyes who doesn't ask about my invisible scars. But even in her arms, the cold of that night returns. The red puddle spreading, footprints into the darkness, and Voss's voice whispering, "Come in, son." Cleveland remains the same. Lakes lapping rocky shores, suburbs sleeping under leaden skies, ordinary men with smiles that hide horrors. If you order dinner at midnight, remember, the tip could be your ticket home or your last signature. There are sounds that stick to your memory like parasites playing on repeat during your worst moments of insomnia. For me, it's a voice, raspy, gasping, feigning agony with chilling perfection. "Come up quick, I'm hurt." 4 words that nearly cost me my life. 4 words that taught me that compassion can be exploited, that urgency can be manufactured, that a simple act of human concern can become the gateway to a death trap. My name is Kateri Vance. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 4 years, I've worked as a nighttime alcohol delivery driver in Detroit, Michigan. It's not a glamorous job. It's the kind of job you take when you need to pay off massive student loans while holding on to your dying dream of becoming a professional photographer. But it has its perks. Nighttime tips are generous, customer interactions are brief, and the city sleeps while I work, which means less traffic and more deliveries per hour. I know Detroit. I grew up here. I understand its rhythms, its safe neighborhoods, and its red light districts that you avoid after dark. I've developed instincts over 4 years of driving around the city at hours when most sensible people are asleep. I know when something feels off, when an address is suspicious, when an order smells like trouble. The night everything changed, my instincts were screaming alarms, but I didn't listen. And that mistake almost cost me everything. It was a Wednesday in February, brutally cold even by Detroit standards. The temperature had dropped to 6 degrees below zero, and the biting wind from the lake made it feel like 20 below. My shift had started at 10 p.m., and it was now 2:47 a.m. 1 more hour, and I could go home, take a hot shower, and collapse into my bed. My phone rang with a new order. The app showed the details. Order 4A2. Items: 2 bottles of Grey Goose vodka, 1 bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey, 6-pack of Modelo beer. Total $127.50. Tip 40 hours. Address: Meridian Hotel, 1847 Woodward Avenue, room 306. Special notes: urgent, please hurry. $40 tip. That was generous. Too generous for 3 a.m. At a hotel I knew was a seedy dive in a questionable neighborhood. The Meridian Hotel had a reputation. Not a good one. It was where you went when you needed a cheap room by the hour, no questions asked. Addicts, dealers, couples on the run. People fleeing from something or someone. It wasn't exactly dangerous, but it wasn't the Ritz either. But $40 was $40, and technically, the address was in my delivery zone. I accepted the order. The 24-hour liquor store where I picked up the inventory was 10 minutes away. I loaded the bottles into my 2011 Honda Civic, making sure they were well wrapped in protective bags to prevent them from breaking. It was so cold that I could see my breath forming clouds inside the car as I waited for the heater to kick in. As I drove to the Meridian Hotel, I checked the app again. There was no customer phone number listed, which was unusual. Normally, there was at least one number to contact in case of delivery problems. But this order only had the note: urgent. Please hurry. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. Just a tingling sensation in the back of my neck that I had learned to recognize, but not always to obey. I arrived at the Meridian Hotel at 3:04 a.m. The building was exactly what I expected. 5 stories of worn brick with windows that looked like they hadn't been washed since 1987. A flashing neon sign read H-Tel M Ridian with the letters O and E burned out. The parking lot was nearly empty. Only 3 cars, including mine. The front entrance had a glass door with cracks repaired with duct tape. Through the glass, I could see a small lobby lit by a single flickering fluorescent light. An older man, the night concierge I assumed, was asleep behind the reception desk, his head resting on his crossed arms. I grabbed the bags from the back seat and stood by my car for a moment, debating. My phone read 3:06 a.m. All I had to do was go up to the third floor, deliver the alcohol, collect the $160 $127 $40 tip, and leave. 5 minutes max. But the feeling of unease was growing. Something about this order felt contrived, orchestrated. I decided to call the customer to confirm before going up. It was standard protocol for late deliveries to questionable locations. The app had a call customer button that masked your real number, giving you some privacy protection. I pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone answered. Hello? The voice was male, but it sounded bad, raspy, gasping, as if speaking caused physical pain. Hello, this is Kateri from Quick Sip Delivery. I'm at the Meridian Hotel with your order. Room 306? Yes, 306. Long pause, heavy labored breathing. Please, come up quickly. I'm hurt. My stomach clenched. Hurt. Sir, do you need me to call 911? No, not the police. Just bring the alcohol quickly, please. Another long pause with that gasping, agonizing breathing. I need help. And then he hung up. I stood in the freezing parking lot, the phone still to my ear, my heart starting to race. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to cancel the order, not to go upstairs. But what if it was real? What if there really was an injured man upstairs who needed help? What if he had called for alcohol instead of an ambulance for some reason? Fear of the police, no insurance, immigration status, who knows? What if I left and he died because I didn't go up? That's the trap, right? Basic human decency can be turned into a weapon. The desire to help can be exploited, and predators know that. But I didn't know that yet. Not completely. So I did what I was taught to do. Call someone and let them know where I was. I called my roommate, Saffron. She didn't answer. It was almost 3:15 a.m. She'd be fast asleep. I left a voicemail. Saff, I'm at the Meridian Hotel, 1847 Woodward, room 306. Strange delivery. Customer says he's injured. If I don't text you in 15 minutes, call the police. Love you. Then I sent her a text message with the same information. I grabbed the bags. I walked toward the hotel entrance. The cracked glass in the door creaked when I pushed it open. The lobby smelled of mold, stale cigarettes, and some chemical that was probably cheap cleaning product trying to mask worse smells. The concierge was still asleep. I considered waking him up, telling him where I was going, but decided against it. I didn't want to cause a scene if this was just a drunk customer exaggerating a minor injury. I looked around for the elevator. I found it at the end of the lobby. A rusty metal door with a sign hanging from a single screw. Out of service. Of course. The stairs were to the right, behind a heavy metal door with a thick wire window. I pushed it open and entered the stairwell. The air was even colder here than outside. No heat. The walls were bare concrete, painted a sickly yellow that had once been white. A single light bulb illuminated each landing, casting deep shadows. My footsteps echoed as I climbed, the sound bouncing off the concrete walls in a way that amplified every noise. First floor. Second floor. My boots clattered loudly against the metal steps. The bags of alcohol were heavy, the bottles banging against each other with every step. My breath came out in white clouds. My heart was beating faster than it should have been from simple exercise. That feeling of unease had turned into something closer to fear. Third floor. I pushed the stairwell door open into the hallway. A long corridor stretched out in front of me, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights installed at irregular intervals on the ceiling. The carpet was stained with a brown-orange pattern that had probably been chosen specifically to hide dirt. Doors lined both sides, each marked with faded brass numbers. My footsteps were muffled by the thick carpet now. I could hear sounds filtering out of rooms as I passed, a television murmuring, someone coughing, the groaning of bed springs. 306 was at the end of the hallway, the last door on the right. There was no light under the door. There was no sound coming from inside. I stopped in front of the door, the bag still in my hands, my heart now pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every fiber of my being told me to leave, to drop the bags and walk away, not to touch that door. But I'd come this far, and my stupid, compassionate brain kept imagining a wounded man on the other side, waiting for help. I raised my hand. I knocked on the door. 3 firm knocks. Silence. I knocked again. Hello? I'm Kateri, your quick-sip delivery. Still nothing. I was about to leave when I heard something. A shuffling sound. Then slow, heavy footsteps, approaching the door. Who is it? The voice through the door was different from the one on the phone. Clearer, without the agonizing gasps. Maybe he had recovered in the last 10 minutes. I'm Kateri, your alcohol delivery. Did you order vodka, whiskey, and beer? A long pause. Then, yes, 1 second. I heard the sound of a security chain being removed, a latch being opened, the knob turning. The door swung open. So fast that I didn't have time to process what I was seeing before it happened. There wasn't one injured man. There were 2 perfectly healthy men, both in their 20s, one white with tattoos covering his arms, the other black with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And both were holding weapons, not guns, knives. Long ones with serrated blades that glinted in the dim light of the hallway. Thanks for coming alone, said the tattooed guy, his smile widening. Come in. Before I could react, before I could scream or run or do anything, a hand grabbed my arm and pulled me forward violently. I stumbled over the threshold, dropping the bags of alcohol. The bottles crashed to the floor, glass shattering, the acrid smell of alcohol immediately filling the air. The door slammed shut behind me. Now I was inside room 306, and I understood, with horrible perfect clarity, that I had walked straight into a trap. The room was small, barely larger than a prison cell. An unmade bed with stained sheets, a cheap wooden chair, an old tube TV on a dresser, and the windows, both windows, were boarded up with plywood. There was no escape except through the door, which was now blocked by the tattooed guy. What do you want? My voice came out as a terrified quack. Your money for starters, said the other guy, the one with the cold smile. He took a step closer, his knife casually pointing at me. Wallet, phone, car keys, everything, now. My mind raced. Money. They wanted money. This was a robbery. An elaborate, calculated robbery where they used the delivery app to lure victims, lonely delivery drivers working at night, who would come alone, who would be carrying cash from previous deliveries. I don't have much, I stammered. Maybe $100. You can have it. Just let me go. The tattooed guy laughed. $100. Honey, we know you made at least 10 deliveries tonight. Tips, cash payments. You probably have 500, maybe more. Plus your phone, your car. We're going to get a lot more than 100 out of you. My phone. The message I had left for Saffron. How long had it been? 5 minutes? 8? Not long enough. Not nearly enough. My phone has a tracker, I said desperately. My company tracks it. They know exactly where I am. If I don't leave soon... Your company doesn't track shit, interrupted the guy with the cold smile. You're a contractor, not an employee. No GPS tracker, no security check-ins. No one knows where you are except us. He was right, and I knew he was right because this was planned. They had studied how the system worked. They had identified the vulnerabilities. Wallet, phone, keys, now. The knife came closer. Or my friend here will cut you until you cooperate. With trembling hands, I pulled my wallet out of my back pocket. Inside was $340, cash from tips from the night. I also pulled my phone out of my front pocket. But the keys, my car keys, were in my other pocket, and a desperate idea formed. Keys, ordered the tattooed guy, holding out his free hand. "They're in my other pocket," I said. "I need—" "Then get them out." I reached into my right pocket, grabbing the keys. The keychain had 3 things on it: the car keys, an emergency whistle my mother had given me, and a small can of pepper spray the size of a lipstick. The pepper spray I had carried religiously for 4 years and never had to use. My finger found the safety button. I slid it open. "Here," I said, pulling my hand out. But instead of extending the keys, I aimed the pepper spray directly at the face of the closest guy, the one with the cold smile, and pressed. The spray came out in a red-orange stream. It hit his eyes, his nose, his mouth. The effect was immediate. He screamed, a sound of pure agony, dropping his knife to grab his face. I didn't wait. I turned and ran for the door, my hands reaching for the knob. A hand grabbed my hair, pulling back so hard I thought it would rip my scalp off. I screamed in pain as I was dragged back, away from the door, thrown against the bed. The guy with tattoos was on top of me in a second, his knife pressed against my throat. I could feel the cold metal against my skin. One slight move, and he would cut. "Stupid bitch," he growled. His breath smelled of beer and cigarettes. "Now we're going to do this the hard way." The other guy was still yelling, stumbling blindly around the room, bumping into furniture. But the guy with the knife at my throat was perfectly calm, perfectly focused. "You know what happens to people who fight," he whispered. "We cut them, slowly, so they learn. Do you want to learn?" Pure terror flooded me. This wasn't just a robbery. This was something worse. Something that would end with my body in this cheap hotel room, found days or weeks later. I had to get out. Somehow. Now. The tattooed guy moved the knife slightly, changing his grip, and in that second, that microsecond of distraction, I acted on pure instinct. I bit. My mouth closed over his wrist, my teeth sinking deep into his skin. I tasted blood. He screamed, instinctively dropping the knife. I rolled away from him, off the bed, crawling toward the door. My hands found the doorknob. I turned it, but the door wouldn't open. The deadbolt was still locked from the inside. I needed to unlock the mechanism. The tattooed guy grabbed my ankle, pulling me back. I kicked wildly with my other leg, my boot connecting with his face. I heard the crack of bone, his nose breaking. He let go of my ankle, clutching his face, bleeding profusely. I stood up unsteadily, turned the latch, opened the door, and screamed. I screamed with every ounce of air in my lungs, a primal scream of terror and survival that echoed down the hallway. "Help! Help me! Police!" I ran down the hallway, my boots pounding against the carpet, not looking back. I could hear footsteps behind me, one of them chasing me, but I didn't dare turn around. The stairs. I needed to get to the stairs. 10 feet. 5. I pushed the stairwell door open and almost fell down the first flight, grabbing the handrail at the last second. I kept going, taking the steps 2 at a time, 3 at a time, so fast it was more of a controlled fall than a descent. 2nd floor, 1st floor. I burst through the door into the lobby just as the concierge woke up, startled by my screams. "Call the police," I gasped, running toward the desk. "Room 306, 2 men. They tried to rob me. They have knives." The concierge, an older man in his 60s with the name Horace on his name tag, picked up his phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. I looked toward the entrance to the stairwell, expecting to see my attackers burst out at any second. But they didn't come. They were upstairs, probably grabbing their own things, escaping through a back exit that they knew about, and I didn't. The police arrived 8 minutes later. 2 patrol cars, 4 officers. A detective arrived 20 minutes after that, an African-American woman in her 40s named Detective Imogene Kellerman. I sat in a chair in the lobby, wrapped in a blanket Horace had found, shaking violently even though it was warm inside the hotel now. Shock, I supposed. Adrenaline wearing off, leaving only raw trauma. I told them everything, the order, the call, the voice pretending to be injured, the room, the men, the knives, the pepper spray, the bite, the escape. Detective Kellerman took notes, her expression grim. "You were the 5th, she said finally. 5th? Fifth delivery person these guys have attacked in the last 6 weeks. Same tactic. Fake order, cheap hotel, voice pretending to be distressed to get them to come up. The other 4 weren't as lucky as you. My stomach churned. What do you mean? 2 ended up in the hospital with serious injuries. 1 lost 3 teeth and needed 40 stitches. Another was sexually assaulted in addition to being robbed. The other 2 got away, but not as quickly as you did. They lost their cars, thousands in cash and equipment. Why didn't you warn them? Why does the app still allow orders to this hotel? The detective sighed. We've contacted the delivery companies, but they're giant corporations. Legal advisors tell them they can't discriminate against certain addresses without exposing themselves to lawsuits. And the attackers are smart. They use different accounts each time, disposable phone numbers, anonymous payment methods. Are you going to catch them? Now that we finally have physical evidence, your blood in the room, fingerprints, DNA from the bite, we have a chance. But they have to be in the system first. The officers went up to room 306. It was empty. Windows closed, door open, evidence of a struggle. Broken glass from alcohol bottles, blood on the bed sheets, my wallet and phone abandoned on the floor. But no attackers. They had escaped. They took me to the hospital. A doctor checked my throat where the knife had pressed. Red line, but no cut, thank God. He checked my head where my hair had been pulled, sore, but no permanent damage. They gave me something for the shock and sent me home with Saffron, who had arrived frantic at the hospital after waking up to my voicemail. 3 weeks passed before Detective Kellerman called me with news. They had identified the attackers from fingerprints and DNA. Both had records: assault, robbery, drug possession. They were actively searching, but they hadn't found them. Are they still out there? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. For now, yes, but we're going to catch them. It's only a matter of time. Time during which I lived in constant terror. Time during which every shadow was a potential attacker. Time during which I couldn't sleep without nightmares of hands grabbing me, knives pressing against my skin, voices whispering, "Thanks for coming alone." I quit my delivery job immediately. I couldn't go on. Not after knowing that every delivery could be another trap. That my compassion, my stupid, naive compassion, could be turned into a weapon against me again. I got a day job at a coffee shop. Less pay, less flexibility, but daylight and people around. Safety. 2 months passed before my attackers were finally caught. They were setting another trap. Same hotel, same tactic. But this time the police were waiting. A volunteer delivery person had agreed to be the decoy, with undercover officers ready to storm in the moment the door opened. They caught him, both of them. Charges: multiple counts of aggravated robbery, assault, false kidnapping, sexual assault. The prosecution was looking at 15 to 20 years if they were convicted. I should have felt relieved, vindicated, safe, but I didn't. Because the damage was already done. My brain had already been rewired by that night. The trauma had already settled into my nervous system like second nature. My therapist, I started seeing one after the first week of not being able to sleep, said I had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Classic symptoms: hypervigilance, nightmares, panic attacks, avoidance of situations that reminded me of the trauma. Your brain experienced a life-threatening event, she explained. It rewired itself to be always on alert, always looking for danger. It's a survival response. It kept you alive. But now it interferes with your ability to live normally. We did exposure therapy, EMDR, breathing techniques, anxiety, medication. Slowly, very slowly, the symptoms improved. I could sleep without nightmares most nights. I could hear my phone ring without panicking. But some things never went back to the way they were. I never answered calls from unknown numbers again. Never. If it's important, they'll leave a voicemail. And most unknown numbers are spam anyway. But occasionally, maybe once a month, my phone rings from an unknown number. And for a second before I can silence it, my body panics. My heart races, my hands shake, because for a microsecond I'm back in that freezing parking lot, listening to that raspy voice. Get in quick, I'm hurt. And on the worst nights, the nights when the nightmares return, I dream variations of the same scenario. Different rooms, different hotels, different attackers. But it always ends the same. Trapped, knife to my throat, voice whispering, "Thanks for coming alone." Now, almost a year later, I can talk about that night without shaking. I can tell the story to friends, to other delivery drivers, as a warning. I can function. But something changed permanently in me that night. A lost innocence. An understanding that predators walk among us, using our own human qualities, our compassion, our desire to help, against us. And that the technology that connects us, that allows us to earn a living, can also be weaponized by those who want to hurt us. The delivery apps still exist. They still operate with the same vulnerabilities. And new delivery drivers, desperate for money, unaware of the dangers, take those night shifts, accept those suspicious orders, trust that basic humanity will protect them. But it won't. Because I learned something in that hotel room. Basic humanity can be faked. Urgency can be faked. And your desire to help someone in need can be exactly the hook predators use to trap you. That voice, "Hurry up, I'm hurt," still haunts me. I still hear it in my quiet moments. It still sounds real, convincing, designed to trigger every compassionate instinct I have. And that's the scariest part of all, that it was so perfect, so calculated, so effective, and that somewhere, other predators are learning the same tactic, using the same tricks, hunting new victims who don't yet know that compassion can be a weapon. Sometimes I see delivery people, in their cars, on their bikes, rushing between deliveries, and I want to stop them. I want to warn them. If someone says they're hurt, don't go alone. Call the police first, no matter how urgent it sounds, no matter how much you want to help. But I don't, because I would sound paranoid, because they would probably think I'm overreacting, until it happens to them, until they get that call at 3 a.m., that gasping voice, that urgent plea that sounds so real, and then maybe, hopefully, they'll remember this story, and they'll turn around, and they'll call the authorities, and they'll live to see another day. Because I almost didn't. I survived, because of pepper spray, a desperate bite, and a scream that alerted a half-asleep janitor. But not everyone is so lucky. And that's what keeps me awake. Not my own trauma, though that's there, but the knowledge that others are still walking into these traps. They're still trusting in that basic humanity that predators exploit. Detective Kellerman told me that after my case, they launched a warning initiative. They sent notices to all delivery companies. They made public service announcements, but how many workers actually saw them? How many paid attention? Not enough. Because 2 months after my attackers were caught, I heard about another delivery driver who was attacked. Different hotel, different attackers, same tactic. The 3 a.m. call, the injured voice, the trap. It's a playbook now, a proven strategy that works because it exploits our best instinct, the desire to help someone in need. And until that changes, until delivery companies implement real safety measures, until workers are properly warned, until society decides to protect those in vulnerable jobs, it will continue to happen. And more people will carry the scars that I carry. Invisible but permanent scars. Scars from a night when compassion almost killed me. Scars from a voice that still whispers in my dreams. Get in quick, I'm hurt. 4 words. 4 words that were almost the last I ever heard. And every time my phone rings from an unknown number, every time I see that screen light up with unknown number in the dark, for a second, I'm back there, in that freezing parking lot, debating whether to get in, making the decision that almost cost me everything, and wishing more than anything that I had trusted my instincts, that I had listened to that inner voice screaming danger, that I had understood that not all calls for help are real, and that sometimes The most compassionate thing you can do is protect yourself first, because you can't help anyone if you're dead. And I almost learned that the hard way.